There is no place I'd rather be right now than with all of you at the second Ocean Summit held here in Newport. The first was 3 years ago. We innovated the concept. It was Sail Newport's idea with Volvo, and we pitched it, and they said, this is a good idea. We did some important things 3 years ago. Who was in the room 3 years ago when we last met? Good, a lot of returning folks. So we must have done all right if you came back for version 2. I'm really excited to be here because of the fact that this race is one of the, as you know, one of the big three in the world of competitive sailing. It's the Super Bowl of sailing, if you will, and if you look at how much an ad costs on the Super Bowl, you realize we've got the world's attention with this race right now. And it was our racers who told us 3 years ago of something that was quite extraordinary. People like Bowie Becking, who'd been around the world 8 times, said, I'm stunned at how much plastic I'm seeing in the ocean now. This is not something I was used to. I've been on the ocean my entire life, and now wherever we go, we're running into marine plastics in the water. It's a devastating situation, and the sailors basically presented us with the problem. We're seeing it. They were our canaries in the coal mine, if you will. They were warning us of the danger. They didn't have any solutions for us, but clearly the fact that the international sport celebrities that they are were clearly shocked, made a tremendous difference to us as we thought going forward in planning another Ocean Summit that we needed to address this. So I'm pleased today my name is Dennis Nixon. I did it 3 years ago. I'm pleased to be back. I'm the director of Rhode Island Sea Grant and a professor at the University of Rhode Island. I'm also proud to announce that this event is being broadcast live on Facebook and also on the Volvo Ocean Race website. So we're sticking to certain time protocols. I hope I don't seem rude if I cut people off, but I've got to do things at certain times because we promised we would do those things at certain times. I'm a professor. I'm not used to dealing with media demands. So at any rate, when we organized this first Ocean Summit, as I said, I remember talking with Rob McMillan in the back of the room and Brad Reed about what sort of topic would be the one that would captivate our sailing audience. And we knew that there are big problems in the ocean besides plastic pollution. We know that ocean acidification is a growing threat to the world's oceans that is a terribly difficult one to grasp. But we knew that this issue of plastic pollution was one that was able to be understood by all of us, and this was actually a problem that we can solve. I am actually old enough now that I can remember life, a good life, without plastic. It was a good life. That movie, The Graduate, in 1967, that famous line to Dustin Hoffman, young man, your future could be in plastic. Well, unfortunately, they were way too successful because they didn't think of end-of-life plastic. And what we're seeing is too much plastic ending up in the ocean. And we'll hear from several of our speakers about how much plastic is in the ocean today. And it's a stunning total. The number that we're running with today is that by 2050, there will be as much plastic in the ocean as there are fish in the ocean at our current rate of depositing plastic in the ocean. That's something that we can't stand for. That's a general introduction. I am really excited about the agenda today because we have turned the corner, I think, from talking about the anecdotal evidence presented by our sailors. And actually now, today, we'll be releasing some very interesting scientific information gathered by our sailors. We have transformed race boats into really fast research vessels. And this is some cool data that I believe is so important. You will be seeing, if you're a scientist, you will be seeing on the cover of Science Magazine or Nature. So it's information of international significance, and I'm so proud to be associated with this event that has caused this research to have been done. And at this point, I'd like to take a brief pause and start the event with a brief film. And if we could cue up that film, I'll get off the stage.
The Volvo Ocean Race is the world's longest and most competitive test of a team in professional sport. The ocean is our racetrack. That's why we and our race partners have a unique opportunity and clear responsibility to fight the urgent issue of plastic pollution. The Volvo Ocean Race Sustainability Programme helps us maximise our impact and spread the message about plastics and ocean health around the world. Thousands of children have experienced our education programme, and it's been downloaded in a wide range of countries across the world, from Ghana to Great Britain. Meanwhile, our science programme has already provided groundbreaking data on microplastic pollution from some of the remotest oceans on Earth. Our scientists have even detected particles in Antarctic waters. We're also working to minimise the footprint of the race itself and leave a positive legacy for a cleaner future. The Ocean Summits bring together people with the power to create long-term solutions to the plastic crisis. During stopovers, countries such as Spain and New Zealand have joined the UN Clean Seas campaign, and we've heard inspiring stories and innovative concepts to help solve the plastic crisis. We've also avoided the use of several 100,000 plastic bottles during our race stopovers that are visited by over 3 million people in total. So join our mission to prevent plastic pollution and leave a positive legacy for the future health of our oceans. Together, we can make a difference.
Great. That's to give you a feel of the international significance of this event and what our impact has been on the people around the world. We're pleased that the corporate world has stepped forward to really make a big contribution to advancing this dialogue. And it's now my pleasure to ask Richard Breezius, the president of the Volvo Ocean Race, to say a few words and welcome us to this beautiful pavilion. Nice job building it.
Thank you, Dennis, and good morning, everyone. It's a great honor to be here with so many of you this morning. And earlier this morning, I was outside of Fort Adams on the other side and looking out over the beautiful ocean there. It's a grayish and windy morning, perfect for sailing. But I just felt gratitude and proud of being part of all the good work that's being done within this race. We are a very small piece of the puzzle of the work that's being done in sustainability in general and around plastic pollution in particular. But since 1973, the Volvo Ocean Race has had the same idea, that is to race around the world, connect one continent with another, and bringing the world closer together. And sport has that capacity to promote good and positive values as friendship, respect, and always trying to do our best. And I believe that that's why you are all here this morning, to really try to do your best to combat the plastic pollution and many other important and pressing issues. And it's very special for us to be in Newport, not only because of the tradition that exists here around the ocean and around sailing and yachting in general, but also because this was where the first Ocean Summit took place 3 years ago. And during this race, there have been 6 ocean summits that have been very productive and very successful, and it has helped us to bring sustainability into the core of this race. And we will carry it forward for another 45 years and keep sustainability in many dimensions close to the heart of this race. So a very warm welcome to you on behalf of the Ocean Race. And now I will introduce to you Dennis, who will then introduce to you the person who really built this pavilion. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Martin Lundstedt, the president of AB Volvo and CEO of the Volvo Group, to extend his welcome. Mr. Lundstedt.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and how should I put it? Welcome to Newport. It's a little bit odd to say that because it's the first time for me in Newport, but I have to say, a very special moment, obviously. Always fantastic to come to the different stopovers. and to meet a lot of people in different capacities and in different forums. And as Richard said, obviously we're very proud of being both the owners of the race together with Volvo Cars Corporation, but obviously also the platform of using the race and the global scope of the race actually to discuss and to meet about subjects that are of utmost importance for us as a company, but obviously for society as a whole, and not at least what will be discussed here today. That has also been one of the key themes, obviously, for the race. Having said that, we are, as Volvo and the Volvo Group, we are a company working with transport solutions, commercial vehicles, buses, trucks, construction equipment. And if we know anything about sustainability, obviously, that the world will need more transport. Considerably more transport. Urbanization is coming, middle class is growing, and we know that GDP is driven by transportation, both goods and people. But we also know that it must be considerably more sustainable. Otherwise, we cannot actually have a situation where prosperity is coming, not only in terms of economic development, but also when it comes to social, ethic, and of course, environmental development. And that is the reason why our mission in the group is driving prosperity through transport solutions. And then we are talking about sustainability for real. Out of our yearly research funds of approximately $2 billion every year, more than half of that is going for sustainability development of powertrains, electromobility, obviously, automation, but also what we will discuss here, how can we contribute also when it comes to the supply chain, working with our customers, and customers, suppliers, and other partners when it comes to the complete value chain. So we are extremely happy to be here, to partner up, and to hear all the experts working with this. We are super happy that we have a distinguished number of guest experts. Göran, who is the Deputy Ambassador, obviously, taking his time to come here. And I have to say also Rashid Somaila, who got the Volvo Environmental Prize last year for also his research on plastics in the ocean and the effects of that. And I have to say by coincidence, because that prize has been since the late 80s, when no one talked about the environmental development, not at least in the corporate world. And by coincidence, because it's a completely independent jury from the group since ever, it actually by coincidence became the expertise of that as well. So we were very happy that you had the chance to come here also. And it's a great leader in these areas, so super proud of that, obviously. I will not talk more. Have a great event, some great days together. We are welcoming a lot of inputs, what we can do together, and thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Lundstedt. It really is an honor. If you learn more about Volvo AB, they are essentially the size of a medium-sized country, with their employees making up about more than Rhode Island, and manufacturing in 18 countries. And so when a corporation of that size makes a commitment to sustainability, it can really make a difference. And as an example of what can happen in the corporate world, I wish there were more Volvos out there, Mr. Lundstedt. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce an old friend and someone who is, I guess we could call her the Chief Environmental Officer of the state of Rhode Island, Janet Coit, the Director of the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. She's going to welcome us to the Ocean State on behalf of her boss, Governor Gina Raimondo. Under Janet's leadership, our state has adopted many innovative programs to protect our greatest asset here, Narragansett Bay. She clearly understands that a clean environment is key to a healthy coastal economy. And she's just getting her microphone fitted to her head. So I finished 5 seconds too soon, but she is really just about, and I can tell more stories about Janet Coit, actually. She once worked for Senator John Chafee, one of the earliest environmental champions in the United States Congress. She's an accomplished attorney as well as an environmental expert. Janet, I'm glad you could join us.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fort Adams State Park. Thank you, Dennis Nixon, for your introduction. Thank you for your ecological stewardship as the director of Rhode Island Sea Grant at our esteemed University of Rhode Island. I'm so pleased to be here today to represent Rhode Island's first female governor, Gina Raimondo. She sends her regrets and asks me to give you her welcome, offer her support, and let her know that we're with you all the way in reducing plastics into our oceans. I want to thank you, Martin Lundstedt, Richard Brisius, the Volvo Group, the Volvo Ocean Race. Thank you for your commitment to saving the world's oceans, and thank you for choosing Newport as the only North American stopover for the race. I heard in 2015 a lot of sailors say it was the best stopover, and I know we feel that way. I want to thank the sustainability partners, 11th Hour Racing, which harnesses the power of sport for good, Mayor Curie Foundation, whose team is well named Turn the Tide on Plastics. Thank you to the crews, the team behind the crews, and you know we're especially proud of Vestas and 11th Hour Racing, skippered by Charlie Enright from Bristol, captained by Newport's own Nick Dana, and directed by co-founder and Brown University grad Mark Towell. We're proud of you guys. I want to thank Clean Ocean Access and especially Dave McLaughlin for his tenacity and your tenacity at reducing plastics into the marine environment and promoting sustainability and making this Volvo Ocean Race really the gold standard for a sustainable event. And of course, DEM's partner, Sail Newport, Brad, Reed, Suma, Kim, all of you, you're amazing partners, and I'm just in awe of you. And finally, I just want to say I'm so grateful for the people at Department of Environmental Management. We operate this park. Many of my staff have been sleeping here every night. We are just a really committed, passionate group of people, and I'm so proud to lead the DEM. So I was part of the 2015 Ocean Summit, and I'm also very proud that we really kicked that off. And the Ocean Summit was such a success that I believe the Volvo Ocean Race said, we need to do this and have the recognition that sailors can bring to the plight of our oceans, to issues like climate change and how that affects our ocean, to the trash and the gyre of materials they see in the most remote part of the world. We need to spread that message when we have your attention at events like this. So solutions to big problems start somewhere, and we really feel that Rhode Island is an innovative, we're small enough in size with our hundreds of miles of coastline where we can get things done and be a place that models something that then can be replicated and expanded around the world. So I have a couple announcements today. First, we're well aware of the issues surrounding climate change, and they're dire and they're significant, and we need to do more. Not everyone is as aware of the fact that what we do on land results in all of these plastics into our ocean. 80% of the plastics in the ocean are coming from land. So what we do at places like this matters so much. And you have determined, 11th Hour Racing and Volvo Ocean Race, that sailors and boaters can be a really big part of spreading the word. So 2 initiatives that we're really announcing today is one, a boat recycling program, and we think this is going to be really exciting. I was with my colleagues across New England, and we're all having the same issue of fiberglass boats that are discarded, abandoned, or simply no longer wanted. Stop being stockpiled, taking space up, valuable space up in our landfills. So we, working with Dennis Nixon and Sea Grant, with 11th Hour Racing, with Rhode Island Marine Trades Association, and I see Wendy Mackey, the executive director here, are piloting a boat recycling program where the fiberglass boats will be ground up and then sent to a cement kiln where they'll become part of a new product, making flexible, durable cement. And we're just kicking this off, and we think it could be something that would really solve a big problem across America. Secondly, I want to announce a new zero plastic marina partnership with the Rhode Island Marine Trades. Our Rhode Island Marine Trades Association has just been terrific. They have been a leader. They were a leader in working with the Coastal Resources Management Council, and Grover Fugate, the executive director, is here, in having the first no discharge zone in the nation, so that Rhode Island was telling our boating community you cannot dump sewage in our coastal waters. And now we're launching a zero plastic initiatives. With this summer, the DEM and RIMTA asking all of our marinas to take on a variety of efforts, from banning single-use bottles to cleanups to education, to ban or reduce plastics into the environment, and to use the power of our boating community that really sees pollutants in the ocean to try to reduce plastics. And we all know they have a terrible impact on marine life, and that this is a problem that if we take on here and demonstrate that we can do something about it, we can have a ripple effect that goes out around the world. So, very, very proud to announce that program. We're hoping our marinas will get competitive with one another. There's a checklist of things that they can do, and we want to compete to be the people who make the biggest difference in improving the world. So finally, I'm so excited to be the first state in America to take the Clean Seas Pledge. So, it's really an honor, and I wanted to invite Charlie Enright, if he's here, from Bristol, from Vestas, to come up. Lisa Svensson, the head of the United Nations Environment Program, to come up and join me. And we're the ocean state. We care very deeply about the ocean. And on behalf of Governor Raimondo in the state of Rhode Island, I want to take the pledge, the Clean Seas Pledge, to turn the tide on plastics and reduce plastics into our ocean environment.
And it's really amazing as well that we are working not only with government, but also how states and cities can take action when governments don't. Well done. Thank you.
Whoops. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the summit. And I know this is a launching point for a really terrific effort. I thank you, Volvo Ocean Race.
Thank you. So we bring news, we bring progress, we bring changes. It's an exciting moment for the state of Rhode Island. Right about now, the approximately 1.2 million people on Facebook are signing in, so you might want to give a cheer for Facebook right now. All right. And I'd like now to bring us a bit to the science part of our program, if you will. I want to introduce a really interesting scientist, Dr. Rashid Sumaila, who, interestingly, in the small world of academics, found that he taught my daughter in a graduate seminar 2 years ago. So this is a very small world. Dr. Sumaila is going to set the scene on how plastic is affecting ocean health with the latest research that he's been performing. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Rashid Sumaila, the winner of the 2017 Volvo Environmental Prize.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks a lot. Yes, to go and this to go back. Yeah. So thank you so much. It's a huge privilege for me to get the chance to share some things with you here, and I thank Volvo for giving me this opportunity. So I have a few minutes. I'm going to go bang, bang, bang with some points. Hopefully you get a few points to take with you. So plastic, marine life, and us people, the interrelationship, that's what I'm going to talk about. And for this state, I don't need to tell you why the ocean is important. It's very important part of the world. It's 70% of the world, as you know. I like to say that the ocean is too big to ignore, right? It's just too big to ignore. We have to do something. Just to give you one statistic, we take about 100 million tons of fish out of the global ocean each year. If you change this into the number of mature cows in terms of weight, that is 100 million mature cows that we pull out of the global ocean each year to feed people. Huge. That is more than what we slaughter on all farms in the world of cows. So this is just one number to tell you. But as useful as this is, the ocean is facing a lot of threats. We have the overfishing problem, we have warming, we have acidification, deoxygenation, and of course we have pollution, pollutants being pumped in, and plastic is a big one, which is the topic of today. So how are we doing with plastic? This is a quick graph just to show you the huge increase in the production of plastic in the world economy. And predictions are that the rate of growth of this is going to double in the next two decades or so if we don't do something. That's why this meeting is important, the race is important, and so on. We have to start taking action to deal with this. And this is research from Canada. You see the list of the kind of things when people go out to clean up the coast. And this list actually gives me a lot of hope, because if you look at these are items we can actually reduce without impacting our quality of life much. Actually, we could even improve the quality of our life, and businesses are doing something to deal with this. I was on a panel with somebody from Coca-Cola, their leader of sustainability, and she's talking about how they're doing research to improve. So there is a lot of hope, guys. We can do it, all right? Now, these plastics going in do have impacts, and these are just examples to tell you. Can you imagine that animal with the plastic covering? If you have plastic covering your nose or your eyes, think about it as a person. That is serious. This can lead to deaths, and we have seen that, harm to the animal, and therefore the total amount of life in the ocean, including the fish we eat. So this can have direct impact on animals, and therefore consequences to people. Now, here is some of the big animals, the humpback whale in the ocean, and research has shown that they take in about 300,000 microplastic per day. Can you imagine that absorbing in their system? What are the consequences of this to them directly and to the ecosystem as a whole? So we need to do something about this. Again, this is another research from our course, the kind of little particles that come out of all sorts of sources that we pump out into the ocean. Now, zooplankton, these are you are down at the bottom of the ocean, the kind of creatures that really keep life in the ocean going. They take a lot of microplastic. They see this and they think it's algae, it's food. They swallow them in. And you know what they do in the body of these animals. The thing is, they don't just stay in zooplankton. Zooplankton is part of the marine ecosystem, the trophic level. Other animals eat them, and it just propagates up all through to people, actually. So these are a few numbers. Salmon, we all love to eat salmon, and then they eat the zooplankton and the little things in the ocean, and it goes into them. But as it goes into them, eventually they come to us. So what happens to the ocean doesn't remain in the ocean. It ends up in your, okay? And people have done a lot of research showing the health impacts of this on people. So if you care about the animals, you take action. If you care about yourself, you take action. And I think we all care about ourselves, right? Can I say that? Yes. So now in general, this is an example of some of the direct impacts. So it's not only the zooplankton eating gets into fish and we eat fish, that's indirect, but actually there are direct impacts also, like I said, where animals are killed or injured or suffocated by plastic, and that leads directly to people. I talk about fish. I really spend a lot of time on fish because of the impacts of fish on the life of people. I like to say that fish is the kind of protein that is good for both the rich and the poor. In this city, if you have a good evening, what do you normally do? You go to a restaurant. And a lot of the times you eat seafood, right? So it's good for rich people. But if you are from West Africa or Southeast Asia, there are many communities, the only animal protein they can afford is fish. good for the rich and good for the poor, very important. And also in terms of jobs, we all care about jobs. We have our honorable senator here. And you know, without jobs, you're in trouble if you're a politician, okay? And fish provide about 250 million jobs to people around the world. When was it? In 2016, I had the privilege of talking just a few minutes, about a couple of hours after President Obama had given a talk. And I was saying that if not for this 250 million, the fish that, the people that fish engages, especially in large developing countries. You know, you remember how many of us were surprised how quickly President Obama became gray. I said, without the fish, he would have been grayer. And not only him, all of us in this room will be grayer. And after that, a lady came and said, but you will never get gray. I get gray, you just don't see it, okay? So this is serious stuff. We need to clean up the ocean. And plastic is one of many multiple stresses on the system. And I think plastic is the one we have a really good chance of dealing with the help of corporations and individuals, politicians, citizens, of course scientists working together. We can take plastic out without reducing our quality of life. Thank you so much, and let's keep the action going. Yes.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you, sir.
Very much.
Yeah. I have to keep this for the next.
It's now my pleasure to welcome back to Newport Dr. Lisa Svensson, the Global Director for the Oceans at the United Nations Environmental Program. What a great title. The only title I liked better was the one she had the last time when she was at that point Sweden's Ambassador for the Ocean. You've gotten the best titles in the world. And she is now at that level of world expert on this particular issue, so it's a great honor to welcome Dr. Svensson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It can only go downhill from there. That's what I would say. So I'm Lisa Emilia Svensson. I work at the United Nations Environment. We work to push environmental issue into the global agenda. And I'm heading up the ocean program at the UN Environment. We heard Rashid talking about the tremendous problem. The question is, where does this plastic come from? And we have a very interesting map where we show where is the plastic actually produced. And around 1/3 of the plastic comes from Asia, China in particular. We have almost 19% produced in Europe and around 20% in North America, Mexico, and Canada. And we can always, of course, blame the Chinese or Asia. But we also have to remind ourselves that the product that we buy, for example, in Sweden and Nordic countries that has very zero waste in terms of plastic, is also imported. So the way that we are consume products and plastic is also a way that we're all part of the problem. So currently, as you can see at the map, Asia has most of the problems. But it has also been a very unsustainable economic model. The way that we produce and the way that we are not having a secure investment in an infrastructure of sewage treatment and financial facilities. And if you look at Africa, which is quite interesting, if we have the same economic model coming into Africa with a growing economy, and particularly if you look in Africa, Nigeria, and Rashid, who's now Nigerian, he just told me that they're making more babies in Nigeria than in Western Europe together in 1 year. So you have a tremendous pressure on the resources in Africa. And we will have the same consumption pattern in Africa as we had in Asia. The problem will just increase. And for example, in Africa, 80 people every minute is born. So there were 250, there will be 2.5 billion people in Africa. And the consumption is from 860 million 2008, there will be a worth of consumption, $1.4 trillion in Africa. So if we're not changing the way that we produce our products, we will have even more plastic and waste coming out in our ocean. And that is fundamental, and this is what we need to change. If you look, for example, the input from the sewage and the wastewater, 93% of the plastic comes from 10 rivers around the world. Some of them are in China, some of them are in Africa. And that also showcases the connection between land and ocean. And if we don't take care of the waste, it goes through the rivers and it comes out in the ocean. So it really showcases the interaction. And once again, you can see Africa as well as we don't have the sewage, we don't have the treatment. And what do we do with the waste is a fundamental question, the whole consumption pattern. And this is something that we need to keep in mind when we talk about where this plastic comes from and how do we clean it up. Or rather, how do we prevent it coming to the ocean? And we also had Rashid talking about the tremendous issues when the plastic is actually already in the ocean, how it affects the ecosystems, how it comes into the fish, how it ends up on our plate, and how it ends up in our bodies. And recent studies showcase also how the microplastic is magnets for chemical, and we don't know what chemical actually do to our bodies and the hormones, and also affecting the whole human wealth. And just to showcase, when it comes into the ocean, for example, we have lost fishing nets, for example, and they're living in the ocean, or they're sort of existing in the ocean, and they contain fishing. Not only do they contain fishing and taking fish, but they also economic value lost, that we are fishing fish, that we don't end up in the market. So it's also an economic case into this whole pattern. And when we do clean the ocean, we clean parts of what's on the surface, but we're not cleaning the water pillar, or neither do we clean the bottom. And we cannot get rid of this problem. It stays there forever. So what do we do? What do you and environment do? We work with government. We have them sort of signing the pledge, signing up to the Clean Seas campaign. We're making them having sort of legislative actions. We're taking ban, initiative, incentives, trying to put a price for actually polluting, but also sort of promoting the good cause, promoting companies that are doing the good way. We're also working with the private sector, trying to make them change the way that they produce. So asking questions, supply chains, and doing the due diligence. And we're having a lot of partnerships with the private sector. We're working with media. We all have seen the BBC's, the Blue Planet, all those articles that is writing about this tremendous problem. And the good and the bad thing about plastic is that when we see it, we all understand it's wrong. It's not belong in the ocean. It's a very visible image. There is also other problems in the ocean that is not so well communicated, but it's obviously a tremendous problem that we work with. So when we talk about the government actions, we do have regional seas. We're working with the government to take actions to ban legislative approaches. But we know even though we would have a legislative action, it might take 10 years before it's negotiated and enforced. And we don't have 10 years because, as we said, the double of plastic in the ocean for the next 10 years, and we can't wait. This is why the private sector is urgent to take actions and change the course tomorrow. And we have this Clean Seas campaign, bringing awareness, changing the attitude, behavioral change. No one would think about smoking on the plane today, I would guess. But remember those days, way back, when you actually smoke on the plane. You would not imagine doing that today. And that's a behavior change that we have to do with plastic. You cannot imagine yourself going to the supermarket and buy a plastic bag. That's the way that we have to think about this tremendous problem all around the world. And finish off, why do we work with the private sector? We're having more companies, we're having broader markets, and the companies are much bigger. The companies are a part of the solution, and they want to be part of the solution. They have the finance capacity, they have the dynamic creativity to change design. This is what we need. We need to change the whole pattern. So the private sector is a core part of our work. And why is UN Environment teaming up with the Volvo Ocean Race? The Volvo Ocean Race, as you know, is a tremendous platform for engagement. The way that you can reach people outside the purely environmental circles that we often negotiating and talk to is just tremendous. And the value, for example, of the social media is $3 million. That's just an amount, not only the financial value, but how we can reach out to an audience outside our own circle. That's why we team up with the Volvo Ocean Race. We have the substance, we have the capacity, we have the message, and we need to convene that message to the audience all around the world. And together we can do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I, for one, am very glad that somebody with Lisa's energy and enthusiasm is in charge of that program. I think we're in good hands. We've heard from the international perspective, but those of us who are Americans want to know what we're doing here in the United States. Fortunately, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has that covered with an Office of Marine Debris. And representing that office today is Jason Rowe. Jason?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Volvo. And thank you all for inviting me here to participate in this exciting and important event. As global citizens, we strive to make an impact on the world. Unfortunately, one of our biggest impacts has come in the form of marine debris. Once treated as an infinite resource, our ocean is now overflowing with man-made items that don't belong there. And with that increasing amount of debris in mind, Congress established the NOAA Marine Debris Program in 2006 as the U.S. federal lead for marine debris. We've been working ever since to achieve our vision of an ocean and its coasts free from the impacts of marine debris. We recognize that we have a long way to go, but I hope that after this morning's presentations, you'll know a little bit more about the problem and what is being done here in the United States to get us closer to an ocean that's free of debris. As you know, and as has been reinforced already this morning, marine debris causes many problems. Our program focuses on preventing harm to coastal and marine species, their habitats, as well as the people who live in nearby communities. And even though there's a long list of impacts, we've found ways to address them. The Marine Debris Program works with partners around the country to reduce these impacts through our 5 main pillars: removal, prevention, research, emergency response, and regional coordination. I'll talk briefly about each of these pillars now, highlighting work going on around the country as well as here in New England. Every year, the NOAA Marine Debris Program funds a number of community-based marine debris removal projects, as well as large marine debris cleanups in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. These projects benefit and reduce the impacts to coastal habitat, waterways, and wildlife. We have funded more than 150 of these projects since 2006, and more than 5,500 metric tons of debris have been removed over the life of the program. A little closer to home, the Center for Coastal Studies worked with lobstermen, divers, and harbor masters to recover derelict lobster pots and other debris totaling over 9 metric tons of debris removed from Cape Cod. We also fund a number of prevention projects with the goal of turning off the tap and stopping marine debris at its source. With these projects, the Marine Debris Program seeks to create lasting changes in behavior that reduce marine debris, such as using a reusable bag instead of a plastic one, refusing a plastic straw at a restaurant, or switching from disposable forks, knives, and plates to reusable alternatives. In order to do this, the Marine Debris Program and our partners work directly with students and their teachers to change behaviors in the classroom, the school, the community, and with local businesses. Talking Trash for Clean Oceans was a social marketing campaign created by Salem Sound 2000 to mitigate marine debris that starts on land in the coastal city of Salem, Massachusetts. Focusing on the low-income, underserved neighborhoods, teens from these underrepresented populations raised awareness and changed littering behaviors in trash-strewn neighborhoods. Sea Education Association students, along with local middle school students and the Falmouth, Massachusetts water stewards, have developed the Trash Shouldn't Splash program that inspires people to reduce their use of single-use items, such as surveys to understand why people use items such as drinking straws. They talk with the town officials and are working closely with restaurants to find business-friendly ways to move away from single-use items. In order to answer complex questions about marine debris, the program provides funding to support research projects with academia and NOAA partners. Funded projects focus on microplastics and their impacts, derelict fishing gear modifications, economic impacts of debris to tourism, and whether exposure to plastics and chemicals can harm wildlife. Researchers from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research are exploring the biofilm community living on microplastics, the availability of microplastics for ingestion by sea scallops, and the effects of microplastic ingestion on larval and adult sea scallops in the Mid-Atlantic Bight and Georges Bank. And researchers from the University of Connecticut are conducting field studies in Long Island Sound and laboratory studies at the University of Connecticut to examine microplastic ingestion by oysters and the effects of ingestion on oyster digestive processes. Following a storm or natural disaster, materials that were previously on land could be washed into the coastal zone and can threaten navigation, making it difficult to reach people in need. We help our partners respond to extreme weather events by providing science, expertise, and best management practices. We also help agencies prepare for these extreme weather events by developing emergency response guides. These guides outline the existing response structures at the local, state, and federal levels to facilitate a coordinated, well-managed, and immediate response to waterway debris. Similar to how we worked here in Rhode Island after Hurricane Sandy in 2012, the NOAA Marine Debris Program recently received supplemental funding from Congress to help state and local partners locate, map, remove, and dispose of marine debris resulting from last year's devastating hurricanes that impacted the states of Texas, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Marine debris issues can be different around the United States, and that's why we have staff located in 10 different regions. Our staff helps provide regional expertise and coordinate with local partners on local marine debris issues. We assist in the creation of regional marine debris action plans by working closely with local marine debris stakeholders to identify high priority marine debris problems and create actions to address them. Marine debris may be a large and daunting problem, and it's easy to feel discouraged. But because it's caused by people, that means we also have the power to stop it, and everyone can play a part in helping. I want to spend the last couple of minutes talking about how other efforts to solve the problems. As we know, there's really just one global ocean connecting us all, and though we focus our efforts here in the United States, we know international collaboration is extremely important for the success of prevention, removal, and waste management efforts. The Marine Debris Program and the United Nations Environment Program recently held the 6th International Marine Debris Conference in San Diego. The conference brought together over 700 attendees from more than 50 countries, including 41 Northeast representatives. And even though his schedule prevented him from joining in person, we'd like to thank Senator Sheldon Whitehouse for his excellent video message that we used to kick off our State of the Science panel discussion. Academia, nonprofit organizations, local, state, and federal governments, industry professionals, managers, policymakers, teachers, and students were all represented, and one message was clear. We need to work together. Regardless of our cultural and geographic differences, there is a palpable need for collaboration across disciplines, across borders, and across industries. More than 150 partners from the Northeast region here are working together on the Gulf of Maine Marine Debris Action Plan. The plan features 4 working groups: consumer debris, derelict fishing gear, microplastics, and wildlife and habitat impacts. Partners have chosen 15 priority items to focus on here in 2018. They include increased availability of shoreside fishing gear recycling, citizen science projects centered on microplastic sampling, and gathering anecdotal data about animals' interactions with marine debris. The Marine Debris Program will soon launch a Northeast Marine Debris collaborative website. As one of 10 regional collaboration portals hosted by NOAA, these sites have both private and public applications so partners can share regionally relevant documents, events, and discussions both internally and externally. I know I've covered a lot really quickly, but if you'd like more information regarding actions you can take to be part of the solution on marine debris, please get in touch. You can contact Demi Fox here in New England, or I can help you if you have interests in other parts of the country. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very much.
So far, we've heard about efforts from the state of Rhode Island, the U.S. government, the United Nations. We'll hear more about corporate efforts later on. But I think the reason we're here is to learn about the Volvo Ocean Race. Our next 3 speakers I'll introduce at once, and they can trade off on each other as to terms of when they want to speak. But I'm pleased to welcome the following individuals to the podium, and they can jump up and down as they see fit. First, Anne Cecile Turner, who is the Volvo Ocean Race Sustainability Program Leader. Stuart Templer, the Volvo Sustainability Director. And the one pure academic in the bunch, Dr. Søren Guttekunst, the chief scientist for the program from Geomar in Kiel, Germany, another outstanding oceanographic institution that has been doing the analysis of the microplastics collected by the vessels. This, to me, is the breaking news. This is the news that will be broadcast around the world tomorrow. This is the really, this is the really exciting, chewy stuff. We've never had data like this come out before, and I am really excited to hear from this panel. Please welcome Anne-Cécile to start.
Thank you. Sport has the power to change the world. Sport has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite. It speaks to the young kids in the language that they understand. And the reason why I like this quote from Nelson Mandela is because it's exactly the reason why we've developed this sustainability program around the Volvo Ocean Race. We really believe that a race has a voice, and we want to use the voice to talk about the ocean. We said it has the power to inspire and unite people. Well, this is the proof that it's working. All our sustainability partners have joined forces in the same vision to make an impact and to create measurable and tangible actions to preserve our oceans. So thank you, all of them, namely 11th Hour Racing, our founding principal partner. We have this vision to create real impact, real positive impact and solutions. We really don't want to talk about the doom and the gloom and become depressed, because it can easily happen when you dig into the detail and the data of the issue of plastic pollution. We want to use the race and use the stakeholders and the boats and the sailors to actually find solutions to the plastic crisis. The sailors are the first witness of this issue. Our playground is endangered, and we have a responsibility, which I believe is a unique opportunity to actually preserve it. So that's what we are doing, and that's how we're going to do it. And that's how we're actually doing it with this sustainability strategy based on 3 pillars. The first one is impact. Impact because we believe that with the voice and the stakeholders and the media attention, we are reaching different types of audiences. So we're reaching the general public, we're reaching the kids, we're also reaching key influencers and stakeholders who are actually here in that room. So we've created a program to reach these people. Minimize our footprint, because of course we need to put the house in order. We wouldn't be so credible if we don't do anything about it. So we have a very solid program to actually minimize our footprint with, of course, a focus on single-use plastic reduction. And the third pillar is about leaving a positive legacy. And we want to really be here to be able to influence behavior change in collaboration with all our host cities. And believe it or not, it's working. This is the impact of the program we had so far. We have created a great partnership with the UN Environment. And I thank Lisa here, because I think we really are showing that it's a real success. We have gathered so far 15,000 pledges, which is a significant number if we think that the total number of pledges gathered is more than 80,000 so far. We are pushing the boundaries, we are pushing the governments, we are pushing the cities, we are pushing the states to take action and to sign the pledge. So thank you, Rhode Island, for having signed the pledge to this event. And our little announcement from yesterday, all the sailing teams have also signed the Clean Seas Pledge. So it's a great achievement. The Ocean Summits, of course, we have, as Richard was saying, 7 of them all together across the race. Thank you, Newport, for having planted the seed. I was there 3 years ago, and it's been an amazing event, great inspiration to actually amplify the movement. So that's what we're doing, and we really want to highlight the positive, highlight the solutions, highlight people who have innovation and actions. On the education program we have, for those who might not be aware yet, we have an education program translated in 7 languages, and this is the reach we're having with this program. This is amazing. The kids are getting out there, being taught what is the subject of plastic pollution, and moreover, how to solve it. What's your plastic footprint? What's your positive plastic footprint? And we have, inspired thousands of kids to do so. And on the plastic reduction achievement, that's just a few examples of the numbers we can achieve. Almost 300,000 plastic bottles saved so far by the program. So one pillar I wanted to highlight specifically, which is one of the most important pillars of the Volvo Ocean Race, the scientific program, because that has been an innovation. We have basically, the thinking was the boats are going in the most remote part of the ocean. They're going in the places that we don't know very much. And we want to contribute to collect and to increase the knowledge of the ocean scientifically. So we've created this amazing scientific consortium with the best in class to actually help us to gather scientific data on the 3 levels, meteorological data, the surface drifters, and of course another new innovation, onboard analysis. So this is a drifter being launched in the ocean, and we have all the boats launching drifters that are collecting scientific data. But I'm not going to go into the details because Stuart and Søren will talk about that. And this is Liz Wardley on board third Untitled Plastic with a filter that is collecting microplastic, collecting microplastic particles effectively. And the idea of that science program is not only to gather data for the sake of collecting data, it's to create momentum. It's really science to policy. And our Sky Ocean Rescue partner is really interested in all this data to actually publish it in the news and create momentum, and it's working. So that's, I think that's a sign of success. And to go into more details in the science program, I will ask Søren and Stuart Templar to come on stage and talk about the program. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Anne-Cécile.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anne-Cécile. My name is Stuart Templar. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Volvo Car Group. As you've heard, there is a real need to act on the problem of marine plastic pollution, but in order to do that, and in order to act in the right way, we need the data. So we're really pleased and proud to support Volvo Cars, to financially support the science program to help do this and get this data. And as people have said before, I think it's fantastic that the Volvo Ocean Race is not just one of the world's toughest and hardest, most competitive sailing races. It's also an incredible scientific research project as well. And we're really pleased to support it because the project's innovative approach to environmental care is a really strong fit for Volvo Cars. Sustainability is in the DNA of Volvo Cars. Since we've been founded 91 years ago, caring for people and the environment has run through our history. You'll all probably know that Volvo is a byword for safety. We've led the industry on safety innovations for most of those 91 years, including inventing things like the 3-point seatbelt in 1959, which is estimated to have saved over 1 million lives. And from equipment like the side impact protection system and airbags to today's connected safety, which is essentially sharing road hazards between our cars via the cloud. And on the environmental side, we also invented in 1976 a device called the lambda sonde, which was the first catalytic converter ever invented, which at the time reduced emissions from petrol engine cars by 90%, and a variant of it is found in every petrol engine car today. And since 2008, all our European manufacturing operations have also been powered by renewable electricity. We have our sustainability program, which is called OMTANKE, OMTANKE is a Swedish word that means to think again or to consider, and it's about that our people think about the environmental and social impact of their actions whenever we do anything. And 1/3 of our program is focused on the environmental impact, our environmental impact, and we have some time-bound targets as well. By 2025, we're aiming to have climate-neutral global manufacturing operations, and you'll see some other targets up there as well. I should say we also have a safety target, which is called Vision 2020, where we're aiming that no one will be killed or seriously injured in a new Volvo from 2020. But we're also committed towards an electric future. That's my favorite quote from Bloomberg, and I think, pardon the pun, the times are changing in we we have a target that by 2025 we will sell 1 million electrified vehicles. And last year we announced an industry-leading commitment that from 2019 all new Volvos launched will be electrified. And we went one step further with that last month when our CEO Håkan Samuelsson announced in Beijing that by 2025 50% of our sales will be from pure electric vehicles. Thank you. And then just back to our sort of association with the Volvo Ocean Race and the science program. So again, we're proud to support the science program. We're also pleased that sales of our V90 Volvo Ocean Race edition will contribute to our €300,000 funding for the program. But also there's a link between the sea and the car as well. So the carpet inlays in the car are made from a material called Econyl, which is 100% recycled nylon, which includes material from reclaimed fishing nets from the sea. And as a car company, we are looking at much greater use of sustainable materials in our cars as well. And then also we in Alicante at the launch of the Volvo Ocean Race last October, our CEO launched with Lisa our Volvo Cars Beach Cleanup campaign, which is about engaging our staff, our 40,000 staff, to do beach cleanups around the world. And we've done a cleanup at every single stopover, as well as around 30 other cleanups around our network. And that was us launching the campaign in Alicante. There's me with a broken elbow, which I can assure you was not sustained in a Volvo. So there you go. And in terms of the science program, the science consortium behind the program, we've got a fantastic team there. And the program is run by Soren and his fantastic team at Geomar, which is an oceanographic research institute based in Kiel, Germany. The groundbreaking innovative equipment is provided by Subsea Tech, also based in Kiel. But enough talking from me. I'll hand over from Soren to talk about in more detail about the program and the findings to date. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart and Volvo Cars, for supporting this program. It's really amazing that we were able to put sensors and science on board to race around the world. And as we already have seen on Cecile's slide, we have meteorological data which we provide for weather forecasts due to NOAA program there. The scientific drifter buoys, which are getting deployed even on the next leg, for example, between Newport and Cardiff. They are measuring sea surface temperature and the ocean currents at the end, and this will help us to find something like predictions for hurricanes and to prevent that. Next to this, the sensors on board and turn the tide on plastics from the very first day, so I'm really grateful for that they took this system, and Team AkzoNobel since Auckland on. We get that on board in situ data, so oceanographic data as carbon dioxide, sea surface salinity, sea surface temperature, and chlorophyll A, so the phytoplankton, the biomass which converts carbon dioxide to oxygen, so the air we breathe. And all of this data is being gathered. It's really unique. We in science never had these spots, for example, in the South Pacific of carbon dioxide. Why is this important at all? You could think of. It is important as we are clearing some white pages in our scientific databases, because this data is being used to produce and simulate the climate, and therefore it helps to improve our climate models. And carbon dioxide, if it dissolves in water, it can act as a mild acid and therefore disintegrate calcified organisms such as mussels or coral reefs and even some fish. And as you can see on the upper left side, the pH drops, and this is called ocean acidification. Next to these oceanographic data, we also gathered data about microplastics, and everybody is interested in that at this very moment. So microplastics are particles below the size of 5 millimeters. So you can barely see them when you're just having a look here into the harbor. Therefore, we had to use a unit on board. And Liz Wardley is having, for example, these microplastics filters with them. You have seen them in the video. They collect the microplastics particles in them, and then I go back to Germany and analyze them for their content. With a Raman spectroscopy, which just looks at the properties of a material, and therefore we can find the results, what is inside there. And this is really the amazing stuff which we have been able to gather. We found microplastics, sadly, in nearly all of our samples. So this shows how pervasive and vast the problem is already. And especially the Point Nemo, the farthest distance to any land, even there we found microplastics particles. 2 days ago, when I was on the One Ocean Exploration Zone, there was an old granddad coming to me, and I explained all the details about microplastics to him. And he thought, okay, what should we do? We should clean the oceans. I think there are companies who will take care of this action, but not everybody can have a company to clean all of our oceans. And therefore, I think I told him, if you have a leakage in your car, you will not think about cleaning all the highways or all parking lots you find. You will first fix this engine and then keep the system running. And so everybody should take action and reduce your use of single-use plastic.
Thanks very much, Soren, for that, and it's fantastic stuff that you're doing, and many thanks to the teams as well. And we'll hear from Dee later and her fantastic team who's been helping with the data collection. But I think from a Volvo Cars perspective, it's great that we can go around cleaning beaches, that we can financially support the science program. But we feel there's more that we can do at home, and we need to step up to the plate a bit more. So I'm pleased to announce today at the Ocean Summit here in Newport that Volvo Cars will be removing all single-use plastic from our events, restaurants, and our offices by the end of 2019. Thank you. We estimate this will amount to around 20 million single-use plastic items per year, which equates to around 500 items per employee. And these single-use plastic items will be replaced by more biodegradable alternatives, such as paper, plastic, and pulp products. We'll also be encouraging our employees to bring their own water bottles and coffee mugs to work. And also plastic straws will be completely banned. And we're doing this as a sign of our commitment and support to the UN Environment Clean Seas campaign, but also as part of our contribution to help turn the tide on plastic. Thank you.
I can't resist asking a question in particular about this slide. We heard earlier from Anne-Cécile that not to be surprised if we saw a concentration in Southeast Asia. But what struck me as a surprise is the other big concentration. Would you like to comment on what you saw there? Were you surprised as well when you saw the area around the mouth of the Mediterranean?
So of course the Mediterranean Sea is not like well ventilated like other oceans, and therefore I think that's why we have found even high measurements of microplastics there. Of course, as you just mentioned, the high concentrations in the South China Sea. We at the GMR, we also started a collaboration because the samples we measure here, that doesn't mean that the country which is closest is the pollutant. And we want to backtrack the origin of the plastics due to ocean currents. So now that we gathered all of this information, we will backtrack to their origin.
And can you comment, based upon the typical loop current in the Pacific, where is that plastic going to end up that starts here.
Yeah, so of course it's going clockwise up to the northeast, so it could end up, these high concentrations could be part of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
One more question to Volvo. These two vessels, Untitled Plastic and Akzo Nobel, that carried the equipment, have produced such startling, important new information. Would you be supportive of having instruments on all the vessels that compete in the next ocean race?
We'll have to see. We'll have to look into that. I think that's the sort of response. But I think, you know, let's just concentrate on what's happening at the moment. I think, and what's being done now, and the information that's being gathered at the moment. So, which will really help inform the scientific community.
Thank you so much.
We'll look at that. Thank
I'm
you.
just greedy for more data.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dennis.
Hi, Dee.
Thank you.
How are you?
It's really good. Really good. All right, we're going to get to a really interesting part of the program now, because my guess is you've heard from some scientists and professors before, but we've got two of the rock star skippers on the race who are going to join us next for some questions. And I'll be asking them for a while, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions as well. And when we get to that point, we'll just have to wait until we get a microphone to you to ask those questions. But if I could please ask our two distinguished guests, Charlie Enright and Dee Kafar, to please join me on the stage. Thank you, Charlie.
Hey.
Thank you, Dee. These are the folks who've made this problem clear to us, and they've had the experience in sailing. We've all seen the films. I know I'm terrified whenever I'm watching the Southern Ocean films. So a tremendous amount of courage you've gone through, and yet you've maintained your strong interest in ocean pollution and spreading the word to others at events like this. 3 years ago, at our last Ocean Summit, the sailors that spoke seemed genuinely surprised at the amount of plastic that they saw in their trip around the planet. What part of the race, either this year or last time around, have you seen the most debris? Either one can lead.
Well, for me, last time it was my first time sailing around the world, so I didn't have a lot of data prior to that, certainly. But I'd say that going through the Malacca Strait was probably the most, polluted part of the world that we'd seen. And, it makes sense because it's one of the most densely populated parts of the planet. And, as we all know, it's a land-based problem. And, it was pretty startling. There were points in the strait where there was so much marine debris, you felt like you could walk from one side to the other. It was something we were constantly backing down. It prohibited performance. It was startling. And that's a lot of what got us to the Ocean Summit here in Newport last time around.
Dee, was your experience the same?
Yeah, I guess having previous experience of what I'd seen, when you go around the world several times, you have a reference, and the sad reality was it was getting worse. And I guess now I'm in an environment where I'm even more aware, so I feel like I'm seeing more, and I don't know whether it's because my awareness is heightened or because the reality is there is more there. But I've got a youth-orientated crew that are doing this for the very first time, and they're the ones pointing it out. So I think the reality is it's out there and it is getting worse.
Thanks very much. Charlie, on this leg to Newport, we saw a lot of compelling videos of boats slowing down in the Sargasso Sea with the weed that you had to sail through, and kind of funny pictures of weed stuck in your lifelines as it was blowing on board. I'm kind of curious, did the weed foul your rudder and keel as the plastic did? And did you find, and sort of I'm really curious about, was there plastic embedded in the weed that you were pulling off the boat?
It made for a tricky passage, certainly. All the weed that we had in that part of the world. The weed is a natural occurring thing, but
Right.
there's certainly a lot more of it with the rise in sea surface temperature, in particular parts of the world. It's important for biodiversity, as far as a place for that to live. Whether or not there was microplastic in it, I can't say, but I know that one big particular patch housed an entire fishing net, some serious leakage, and we had that caught on our rudder, and we had to do a back down. And I think the old team probably would have gotten that off the rudder, left it in the ocean, and continued racing. But we actually took that bit of fishing net and we tied it onto our stern, delivered it all the way here to Newport, and then disposed of it. So,
all right,
pretty interesting story.
That's cool. And now that you have it here, perhaps we could deliver it to Volvo to make the carpeting for the next generation Volvo. We've got it here. We'll get it off to your truck.
Or our sunglasses. You never
Well,
know.
yeah, or sunglasses, whatever else we could use. So all these alternative uses are just wonderful. Ferdi, as the skipper of one of the two boats that ran the science program that produced the incredible information we just heard about, that really, from the world of science, I'll tell you, is record-breaking information that we're going to get out there to the world community. What's it like to collect the data while you're racing? Was it a distraction? Was it a pain in the neck? Are you glad you did it? And would you recommend that all the other boats do it as well next time around?
It's interesting because it was a bit of a battle at the beginning. You can imagine somebody telling you, can you take 45 kilos of this machine and spend your time filtering water with an outlet open, and it's going to be really important. I was here to race a Volvo Ocean race with some of the best sailors in the world. I was thinking, no way am I taking that. But it was kind of started right from the beginning, from the leg zero and the prologue. So we kind of had it right from day one. And it just kind of got ingratiated into how we manage the boat, how we run the boat, and the compromises were made. So we run it when we're making water, so the scoop's down anyway, and managing it with the charging routine so that we knew how much extra fuel it was going to take, and then managing the time taken to change the filters. And it's just, I was very lucky. Liz Wardley on board's my boat captain, and she completely embraced it, has become part scientist, and gives Soren a very hard time now with the machine and his filters. And it is labor intensive, and when the others were asking about it, I was like, don't underestimate how much it does take. But when we had it right from the beginning, it just has formed part of how we run the boat, and it's easy. And I think if you speak to AXA Nobel now that have had it retrofitted halfway through the race, they're having to change their routine, and it's had a bigger impact. So I'm very, now with hindsight it's great, but I'm very grateful that we embraced it from the beginning, reluctantly at first, and have been part of getting this groundbreaking data that can't be ignored, that is actually going to help legislation and change happen.
Well, I think it's fascinating. You know, as you know, I represent UNOLS, a fleet of U.S. research vessels that chug around the world going 8 knots. And the fact that you can do the systematic samples going 25 knots in very remote parts of the world, it's an incredible data set that you've produced. And on behalf of the science community, thanks very much for doing it. I do want to say, but as a one design racer myself, I talked to your crew yesterday. You know, I sailed on board your boat yesterday. How did they balance it out in terms of weights and so on, that you weren't in any way prejudiced by doing this?
So the fleet carry corrector weights, and we've been corrected for the extra 45 kilos. I tried to argue for the extra filters I was carrying and fuel I was carrying, and I didn't win that argument very well. But the only difficult time is when we're on the wrong tack and she's to leeward, and but it makes her change the filters pretty quick. But it's it's been all right, and we're being competitive in the fleet, so it hasn't hindered us too much.
That's great. And Charlie, would you favor the entire fleet adopt this technology for the next race?
I would. And actually, we had a conversation about it early on with Anne Cecile, actually, and we asked if we could have them for all the boats. Because I think that would be in the spirit of the one design rule, be the most fair. But it became a cost prohibitive thing, and AXA Nobel actually had the most amount of corrector weight, so it was only fair that they take the data collection device and even the fleet up that way.
Okay, fabulous. Well, let's stay tuned on this subject, because it's a source of incredible information we can't overlook, and the science community is going crazy over the data. So thank you so much for doing that. So you've sailed around the world many, many times, and you've been to a few of the other ocean summits that have been held around the world now as part of the race. Exposed you to a lot of problems of plastic pollution, but what's the best solution that you've seen so far?
I think ultimately it's got to be education. And the exploration zone, the education package that's running in parallel with the Volvo Ocean Race has immense power. You see the groups of school children coming, and they're the ones that think differently and want to change behaviours. We're too ingrained in our habits, and it's quite hard to change. But children are very open, and they see these pictures and they're traumatised by it and want to make change happen. So I think education's probably the most powerful tool we have, and I think they're the generations that are inheriting our mess and actually want to make it better.
Charlie, anything to add there?
No, I'd agree. I think that getting the word out and making people aware of the problem is probably the best solution that we have. I mean, you look at a place like Narragansett Bay, and it's cleaner today certainly than it was when I was growing up. And that's a product of people knowing that there's a problem and taking action, not only in the way that they live their lives, but in a watershed as small as Narragansett Bay. It makes sense to actually get out there and clean it up. Which is not the case clearly with the middle of the ocean.
I have to jump in here as Director of Rhode Island Sea Grant to say that Narragansett Bay today is clearer and cleaner since the Industrial Revolution, first polluting it. And that's an incredible thing to say, and there's a lot of folks who've all chipped in. It's about $1 billion of public investment. I see my friends John from the Nature Conservancy, I see Save the Bay, I see DEM, I see the CRMC. Everybody's had a hand in transforming this incredible resource that we have, but it's paid off. If you spend time on or in the water, you can see this investment has worked. And I know Wendy Mackey is now from the Round Marine Trades trying to sell Narragansett Bay as the Caribbean of the North. So the commitment, I think, is certainly a big part of what we have here in Rhode Island, Charlie. We appreciate that. But, you got to be where you are because you're a really champion sailor. But how do you feel now about being a spokesman for sustainability half the time? Do you think the power of sport to create change is one that gives you a different focus and meaning in what you're doing?
I think it certainly does. I think the amount of people that follow sport, particularly sailing, here in the state of Rhode Island, outweighs the number of people that receive the scientific journal in the mail these days. So I think we have the ability to be the microphone, and it's our responsibility, and to especially for me, empower a next generation. Being a father and having so many kids come in and out of the race village, we feel like it's our duty, and we're lucky to be able to do it.
Okay. Well, we can't just talk the talk. How do your teams implement sustainability on board? I remember the old days of racing sailboats where cases of water bottles would come on board and bang around inside. What have you done on board the vessels and in your port stops to maintain that same ethos of sustainability?
Well, I think you have to practice what you preach, and it isn't easy, as a lot of people that are making changes ashore is often quite difficult, and it's about being organized and prepared. And heaven forbid should any one of my team be ever photographed with a plastic bottle or a straw. And it's been something that we've had to embrace. And various stops, we've been to 12 host. We go to 12 host cities around the world with this, and it's about educating and leaving a legacy. And some of the places have been more difficult than others. And then equally, you have to translate that onto the boat and how you go. When you're racing these boats anyway, you want to minimize rubbish, you want to minimize weight. So actually a lot of work is done in the preparation. And interestingly enough, with us, we eat freeze-dried food. We are on single packets so that everybody can eat what they like and not have to like what someone else likes. And it's, a kind of an evil, it's an evil plastic bag that has to do the job. But one company has actually compostable bags now, and another company has already contacted us saying, we're trying to change our packaging, we're trying to get rid of the plastic, we want to make change, can you test stuff out for us? And this is half of what this campaign and this messaging is about, is making demands from suppliers and trying to get them to look at their supply chain, look at their goods and try and make change. So I feel that was a very positive thing. It's a slow process, but we're slowly getting there.
Thanks. Charlie, I understand that your team meets with a local environmental organization at every stopover. What are some of the other environmental issues that you've bumped into when sailing around the world?
Innumerable, really. I mean, part of the legacy component for Vestas 11th Hour Racing is providing a $10,000 grant from 11th Hour Racing to a local nonprofit at every stopover that we go to. And I think it was just last Tuesday here we were working with Save the Bay out on Ocean Drive on some salt marsh preservation. And, it's really interesting because it's something that I didn't know a whole lot about, and it's just in my backyard, so it was enlightening for me, and to be able to share that with the rest of the team was pretty cool too.
Okay, thanks very much. Dee, on this leg, the fleet sailed past an oil exploration zone. and you reflected on the impact this has on the ocean and the hope that we won't need to continue using oil for plastic production. Can you tell the audience more about what you saw and perhaps some of the progress being made in England on plastic bans?
So, yeah, I mean, on this leg, there are a number of exclusion zones to keep us away from a lot of the oil exploration and the rigs that are out there. But there was one area where we were literally, as a full fleet, because we could all see each other still, sailing in amongst these boats, and you can see them drilling, you know, the fire coming out, the water coming out. And the actual process for that one drilling vessel involves about 5 other vessels around. Somebody for security, somebody for environmental, somebody for this, somebody for that. And you can see it all come up on the AIS. And you're just looking at the volume of money being spent in that environment and that world, and you're like, there has got to be, in this day and age, surely we could invest that money in renewable energy or alternatives. And for me, that was a real stark reality check of there's still so much money being invested in that, yet we should be starting change. And that was quite hard.
This event, until 10 o'clock, I believe, we have 3 more minutes, is being live streamed around the world. If you could say one thing to the 1.2 million folks watching, what would it be? Would you tell them to do something differently in their personal lives? Would you recommend something that one thing to change about their daily practices? A book to read? What would you tell that Facebook audience?
For me, it's all about behavioral change, and I think that starts with recognizing when you have a choice. And you know, we go through our daily lives making a lot of subconscious choices, and when you realize that there is a choice, there's generally a sustainable choice and kind of a nonchalant choice. So I think that if you realize the impact that you yourself are having, that's where it starts. And the more you can recognize what those choices are, the more you can make smart ones.
Great.
And I think it's awareness that each individual can make a very small change, and collectively as a group, it's a really big impact. So don't underestimate the power of change.
Thanks very much. Now we've got some time. We've got some time to entertain questions from the audience. We have people with microphones to come to you. Does anyone have a question for our skippers? Unusually shy crowd.
Not all at once.
Yes, over here, sir. Let's get a microphone over to this gentleman. There we go.
So you've just seen the new data on the microplastics. Are you seeing anything from your observations, from your kind of anecdotal observations that collaborate that? I mean, you're talking about the Malacca Strait, and yeah, I don't think that'd be a particular surprise because the Indonesian through flow goes through there. Sorry, I'm a scientist, but yeah. So do you see anything with those data that kind of collaborate, or is it completely a surprise?
I think the reality is the macroplastic we see is always in the obvious places where it's more populated, closer to shore, where there's more traffic. And then you go to the remote of the Southern Ocean thinking, well, there's not any traffic down here, so surely we're not really collecting anything. And when you get the data back that says there's microplastics there, the reality is they have to come from somewhere, because the currents have got to take them there, because there isn't the traffic depositing the macroplastics there to break down. So I think that was the harsh reality, that it's everywhere and it's everyone's problem now.
Yeah, the idea of Antarctic krill eating the microplastic in the Southern Ocean is perhaps the most depressing news you presented for me today. Thank you very much. Joe, you have a question? Yeah, let's get the mic over to you, though, Joe, because we're still live. Front row. Wait, wait do we get you on the mic?
Dennis, in terms of the sustainability vision, is there any action being taken pushing upstream to the manufacturers, to the DuPonts of the world, and talking with that leadership, going, guys, you guys are scientists, we gotta, what can we do here?
I was talking about this with Senator Whitehouse just last night. I think, because I had the chat with Senator Whitehouse, and I said, gee, if you read the literature from the American Chemistry Council, Council of Producers and so on, it's like we're in favor of the environment and so on. And then Senator Whitehouse proposes a bill in Congress and finds that it sees dramatic resistance, saying absolutely no. So I think there is still an educational process that has to go on with that industry to say that the biggest thing to do is simply walk with your feet and not buy products. I think the fact that Volvo is getting rid of plastic in its daily life ought to send a message to manufacturers of products. If more and more of us do that, that's going to inspire them to change, or they're going to go out of business. All right, thanks, Joe. Question in here in the middle. Oh, back of there, yes.
So the water filtration you have on board, is it instant, or do you need to have like some sort of time delay before it's drinkable?
The water makers, pretty instant. It's pretty good.
Desalination?
Yeah, however you turn the seawater into drinking water.
Yeah, it
or
happens
wine, or Diet Coke, or... He says I drink water on board.
We need. Sounds like we need to change filters.
The water to wine one is the best one, I'd say.
Yeah, it just takes us a little time to run through the system. When we're not using them, they're all pickled so that they're preserved and not getting in, any bacteria growth. And then we just flush it through, and it just takes a little time to run through the system. The water runs into the sink in the galley. Once you're happy with the taste, then flick it straight into the tank. It's a pretty quick process.
Question here.
Hi, I'm Jackie Nunez. I'm from the Last Plastic Straw and Plastic Pollution Coalition. And just want to speak to what you were speaking about, American Chemical Council. I don't know if you guys are aware, but they just made an announcement, I think it was right before Earth Day, that they were in favor of product stewardship, they call it, for straws to be served upon request. And so to me, I think that's huge, because they're acknowledging that that we shouldn't be, putting this stuff off automatically. And my whole thing is that I've always said it's about plastic, not the item, and I think they just stepped right into it, making that announcement, and we can expand on that and hold them to it.
Good observation. Thank you very much. Other questions? We got microphone over here. Somebody in back? Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Charlie Enright, I have a question for you, because Vestas 11th Hour Racing as this leading on sustainability thing, and I wonder why you've chosen not to take the device on board.
Ooh. 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 Uh-oh. This is one of the Dutch wave makers.
There you
go. Yeah. You're
There you
making
go.
waves here. Okay.
Okay. That's a good question. Very fair. I tried to address it earlier. At first, there was only one, and Dee reluctantly put her hand up to take it in the beginning, and then there was a second one. And like we said, from the competitive standpoint, it made the most sense for it to be on AkzoNobel. But because there was only two, we asked actually if there could be seven, one for every single boat, but that wasn't feasible. But with the addition of the second device to AkzoNobel, being limited to two devices, we're still getting the same amount of data, I guess. And from a competitive standpoint, that seemed like the fairest solution to all. How's that for a cop-out?
Yeah,
pretty
absolutely. Question right here, sir.
All right, thank you. I was wondering, in all the time you spent racing around the world out on the oceans, what's the most striking evidence of pollution that you've seen out there?
I think when you're talking macroplastics, what you can see that's easy, the heartbreaking thing, I've become obsessed with balloons. And you see the bottles, you see food packaging, you see nets, you see plastic crates. And that all became quite normal, but it's balloons that I've noticed. And I think you watch a movie and it's a symbolic release of balloons and it looks stunning, but where do they go? And we're seeing them in the ocean. And then you see those remarkable photos and images with the marine life with a balloon or a straw or something, and it's heartbreaking. But in honesty, we don't see straws out on the ocean. We pick them up off the beaches. But it's for me, it was balloons. Balloons this time. I've seen 3 balloons on this trip around the world, and each time I swear I will never, endorse any kid to have a balloon ever again. Sorry.
Just an announcement that you might find it interesting that the town of New Shoreham, Block Island, Rhode Island, has banned balloons for this very reason. Because as you sail to and from that island, there's always a balloon in the water. Well done. Charlie, how about you? What's the most interesting pile of junk you've seen floating?
The balloons are certainly disappointing, and my wife worked on the stopover committee last time to make sure that they were banned from the Volvo Ocean Race Village last time around. But you know, it's the single-use plastics. It's the everyday stuff. It's the water bottles. It's the plastic bags. It's the cigarette filters. You know, but the things that catch your eye tend to be the macroplastics. You know, we saw a 55-gallon drum, you know, during the day, thank God, you know, in our way, just 150 miles from here on our way into Newport. So, you know, it certainly varies, but there's no shortage of options.
And polystyrene packaging, polystyrene and styrofoam, that just breaks down. I mean, surely we can find an alternative for packaging our white goods. There's a lot of that in the ocean.
Questions in back there. I think, yes, sir? Ma'am?
Sorry. Good morning. My name is Jessica Service. I'm with U.S. Sailing. I just have a quick question for Dee and Charlie. You both talked about education as really being a powerful tool for youth. So what would be your message to all youth sailors, so not only that they can enjoy our sport for a lifetime, but their children can then enjoy our sport for a lifetime?
I think it's about spreading the message. There, obviously, we're preaching to the converted there. Young sailors love the playground that we're enjoying and the office that we play in, and they're wanting to do a good job too. So they're kind of the best advocates to spread that word to their school friends and their social group, so that their behaviours all change. And I think, you know, just spreading that message, they're probably more aware of it than their friends and peers. So that they, you know, have that responsibility then to change people's practice and behaviours.
You know, I'd agree with that, but I'd also say that you know, the single-use plastic water bottles that you see at regattas all the time. You know, the kids that, you know, bring their lunch to sailing class every day. You know, things as easy as you know, eliminating grocery bags, or, you know, even turning the lights out. You know, flipping the switch when you leave the house. I mean, there's a lot of tangible things that you can do every day.
Yeah. But just since the last 3 years, when we talked about this, no plastic bags anywhere in Aquidneck Island or in Jamestown.
Bristol, too.
And Bristol, all right. Slowly we'll get the rest of the state. We will take one last question, and then we will take our break. Yes, sir.
Hi, Dan Redding from World Sailing. I'd just like to ask, what is the one thing that sailors around the world can do to be more sustainable?
One thing? If it was that easy, man. I think it's the education. I really do. I think it's you know, a lot of people in this room, like you said, we're preaching to the converted, but there's a lot of people out there that don't recognize and realize, you know, the problem that we have at hand.
And I'd say don't be afraid to make demands. You know, ask for a water fountain. Ask to be able to refill your bottles so you're not having to buy bottles. You know, make those demands on events and venues, because people now are in a position to make the demands so that the supply is given. And I think that will make a big change.
Great, thank you.
All right. Thank you to the panel. Cool. Begin again. Thank you all for eventually returning to your seats. This section is solutions from the private sector. We've determined that it's really critical that we do things like have NGOs working on the Clean Seas Pledge. It's pretty clear that governments need to take some action, but clearly the actions that we heard from Volvo, that they're eliminating the use of single-use plastics, tells us that the big partner, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, really is the private sector that brings us all the products that we use. And so I'd like to introduce our first speaker in this session on the private sector and industrial solutions. First off is Christopher Wahlberg, the business manager for the automotive sector of Steel and Recycling. Chris. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's been a wonderful day. It's been very interesting. It's great to hear about this extremely important topic. I will be talking to you today about plastics out of our perspective. As mentioned, I'm the business manager for our customer segment, automotive, one of our very biggest ones. And in order to tell you how we look at plastics, I need to tell you a little bit about what we do, who we are, and so on. A very basic idea of taking something that other people don't want anymore and turning it into a material holding value may sound very basic, and this is exactly what our owner's father did in 1939 when he started a company. The company basically traded scrap metal, and he was very successful at it. And the company soon grew into many different business areas, including ferry operations, offshore drilling, real estate, windmills, and of course our recycling. Currently in Sweden we have 95 branches. We help our 70,000 customers with sustainable recycling solutions. What we do is that we collect the material from our clients to our 95 yards. We process the material and we send it all over the world to different smelters and end treatment receivers. In order to deliver a sustainable recycling solution to our customers, we use our material specialists. Imagine people holding a lot of knowledge about plastics, metals, and so on. They go visit our customers. They look at the different processes. They look at the different products that are being created. And we, using our expertise knowledge, we give them insights into what they could do to make recycling more efficient. This means that we help both the environment and we also help our customers with more efficient recycling solutions. Taking plastic as an example, it's an extremely diverse material. You can do a lot with it. It's very good for recycling as well, as long as you sort it right. We talk a lot about plastics. What we forget is that plastic is a group of materials. It's about 700 different polymers. And in order to recycle plastic, we have to have the individual types of plastic. We can't keep it as a big group. In order to keep recycling going, Stena is investing a lot of money in plastic recycling technology. This means that we're taking a deeper step into plastic recycling in the value chain. We want to do more. We want to provide our customers and the society with solutions that are sustainable for the future. So out of our perspective, what is plastic? Is it a future material or is it a material that is degrading our environment? We look at it, we see it everywhere. Since the 50s, when it was first started to be used in the mass production, it's increased by such an incredible amount. Around 300 million tons of plastic is being produced every single year. And we look at it and we see a material that is extremely diverse and it's very useful. We see it in cars. It makes them lighter, it makes them more fuel efficient. In our daily life, it makes it much more easy to handle. There were talks about how food was managed on the boats. Right now, maybe that's the best solution. We have to look at other alternatives, of course, as well. But plastic will be around us for a long time. Unfortunately, it has gotten quite a bad reputation, simply because it ends up in places where it shouldn't be. So what we look at is, what do we do in the future? What do we need to come up with? And again, we need to look at it out of a life cycle perspective. We need to look at it in the planning phase, in the use phase, and also when we collect it and recycle it. It is a behavior change that is needed. And also, we need to create a demand for plastic once it's been recycled. Right now, Stena, we can collect the material, we can sort the material, we can process the material, but we don't really have anyone to sell the nice finished product to. This is something that we need help with. And taking into account, for example, a ketchup bottle, it's a red bottle, looks great, it's very clear that it's ketchup, and it looks good in the refrigerator too. But the red color of the plastic bottle might not mean possible to use in anything else. So we need to think about it. Is a see-through bottle possible? Yes. Is it a different container that should be used? Possibly. So I will end this presentation with a few tips of what we could do. And first of all, 80% of the environmental impact of our products is decided already on the planning phase, on the design phase. So start thinking about, what do we need the plastic for? Is there an alternative? The second point that I want to make is sort right. Like I said, 700 different qualities. We need them in their individual state. So first of all, we can reduce the number of products, and second of all, we can also sort and correct and give them to us. Already at the procurement and purchase state, when you're walking around in shops, do you need the plastic container? Is there a separate option? The same thing in the big industry. Can Volvo cars use something different, as you spoke about, Stuart? And finally, collaborate. We have talked a lot about education today. This is very, very important. We need to talk, we need to spread the knowledge, and we need to really do something together. I want to round off with a quick video summarizing what I've said and a little bit about what Stena does today.
Globally, the use of plastic has exploded. And by 2050, the world is expected to use 4 times as much plastic as it does today. Plastic is a very useful material, strong and durable, yet lightweight and flexible. With these qualities, it's no surprise that 9 billion tons of plastic have been manufactured since 1950. 2 billion tons are still in use, either in existing products or as the result of recycling. Plastic is a great but challenging resource. When used correctly, it has many advantages. It also has the potential to become as great a recycling resource as many metals are today. But to get the most out of plastic, we have to make sure we take care of it every step of the way. A lot of plastics cannot currently be recycled at a reasonable cost, as it contains too many different qualities. Using our 25 years of experience in this field, and by working closely together with our customers, we have implemented a circular approach to recycling already in the production design phase. We choose to invest in the recycling of plastic as it creates new sustainable value. Plastics should never end up in our oceans or in landfills. Plastic is a valuable resource that should get back in the loop and be used again and again in new products.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Chris, if I could ask one question. My pet project, of course, is the recycling of end-of-life fiberglass boats. Is Stina doing any research in this area?
Absolutely. We've actually initiated the project both in Norway and in Sweden as of right now. We're very good at recycling cars, and we've actually taken the next step to start recycling fiberglass and plastic boats as well.
We'll have a good conversation over lunch.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. I'd now like to introduce Anders Jacobsen, the co-founder and CEO of Blue Water, and he will be accompanied on stage with Jeremy Pochman from 11th Hour Racing, and the two of them are going to tag team a presentation about the really tasty water we've all been enjoying here at all the water stations all week. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dennis. So thank you very much for having me here, and I mean thank you, Jeremy, for taking me to your hometown. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I will try to break down the problem that we've been talking about now to what we can do on an individual level. So the first thing I would like to do is to ask the audience here a question. So can everyone in the audience that have used a single-use plastic bottle during the last week raise their hand? I would say that's approximately 80%. This is not so surprising. I've done this in Hong Kong, in Cape Town. The results were the same. This is actually the first time that I have not raised my hand. That's big. And that is actually to give a little bit of credit to Newport, because you have there is access to clean drinking water here in a sustainable way, so I don't have to use single-use plastic bottles. So far during this event, 180 million bottles have been sold globally. That's 1 million bottles a minute. The result is even worse. This is how it affects us. So this is a scientific study made by an independent group called Orb Media. They show that in the US, the tap water, 94% of the tap water contains microplastics, which is harmful for the human health. So why do we buy those plastic bottles? So it is that we made a survey here in the US last year. So it's either that we do not know if our tap water is contaminated, or we know it is contaminated and we have to get another source of water, or thirdly, there is no access to other ways of drinking water. So that's why we are on a mission to provide water, to make sure water is without plastics. And for us, that means oceans without plastics. but it also means drinking water without plastics. And that's how we connect the two. So we would like to go to the root cause of why do plastic bottles end up in the ocean? Well, we have to understand that to be able to change the behavior of consumers. So that is what Blue Water is about. And what we tried to bring to the table is a solution in terms of a water purification unit that can turn almost any type of water into drinkable water. You see examples out here in the Race Village where we try to provide an alternative to go and buy a single-use plastic bottle. We've done it at many different places. We have solutions for hotels, for restaurants, for different venues, because we think this needs to be a solution that can be used in everywhere you are, because people need to hydrate. We're also big believers in one important thing. That's entrepreneurship, but it's even more in human ingenuity. And we don't think that we can do this on our own. We believe that everyone in here has to come together to do something. We believe in partnerships, and I'm very proud to be here with 11th Hour Racing that we have got to know over the last year. And I think Jeremy will tell you a little bit more on how we have started to work even more together.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think we can underscore enough the power of partnerships. I mean, that's what we're creating today. That's where we're starting this conversation today, and where are we going to take it in the future. It's pretty neat to be at the Volvo stopover here in Newport. This is our hometown. This is our, these are our waters, and this is our community and what we really care about. We've spoken today a lot about the threat of plastics to the ocean, and it's really nice to talk about fresh water as well, because water connects us in every single way. It's what feeds us, it's what sustains us and everything. And neatly enough, that's kind of what started 11th Hour Racing back in 2010. We started with this conversation as how to get away from the single-serve plastic water bottle. How do you get that off the boats, and then you expand that out into how do you take it out of our homes. And so it's really great to be working with Blue Water here at the race, but looking back into Cape Town, it was a pretty remarkable experience for us, heading into Cape Town with the Volvo stopover as they're massively threatened by this day zero that's looming right over them. It was very important for the Volvo Ocean Race to not add to that problem. So we partnered with Blue Water, and we made sure that we were able to bring in water from outside, treat it all, and make sure there was no further impact to Cape Town, which was pretty spectacular from our side. Moreover, today, I'm really excited to recognize an initiative that we're working on together with Blue Water, and that's the 2018 Urban Drinking Water Challenge. We've created this challenge with up to $1 million in cash awards and investment over 3 overall winners to future-proof the megacities of our world against facing the same problem. It's going to come up again and again and again, and so we look to you to encourage anyone you know who could be tackling this problem. We encourage you to share this as much as you can. The applications are open until July 2nd, and we'll be announcing it at the Stockholm World Water Week at the end of August. Thank you very much for being here in our hometown.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anders.
Thank you.
As you can see, it really is a partnership of many groups coming together to help solve the problem. I'm really incredibly encouraged at the progress that we can measure since we were here 3 years ago. The amazing number of initiatives that have begun, the things that we have accomplished, it's truly an extraordinary list. And our next part of the symposium, our panel today, is going to involve a guest MC in Chip Giller from GRIST, and he's going to be interviewing live for us our very favorite United States Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who's getting his microphone set up. Louis Perkins, who is the president of Cradle to Cradle, and actually running a really interesting seminar this afternoon, just down the road. And of course, Wendy Schmidt, the president of the Schmidt Family Foundation and the co-founder of the Schmidt Ocean Institute, and certainly a great supporter. Chip, if you want to come up and get mic'd up, this is your cue, buddy. Yes, I deliberately had us running ahead so you'd have more time to interview your scintillating guests, because having interviewed Senator Whitehouse before, I know you need to build extra time into the schedule. Yeah, see, that's why you were late. You did a short 5-minute interview with the senator, and that took a little bit longer. So if our guests are ready, we have assembled chairs. Chip, you have to stand. That's your role. Yeah, but the other three have chairs.
Okay.
And I will get off the stage and let you begin having fun with your guest stars.
So you introduced everyone.
I did.
Okay, I apologize, everyone. So let me just kind of set the stage here. And first of all, I just want to say it's such an honor to be up here. I was at the first Ocean Summit 3 years ago, and the issues of sustainability were present then, but a little bit more on the side. And now they've just become so central, and so they're permeating everything. And I think that's wonderful. You know, while all of us in this room and those watching this this morning have different expertises, we share a common cause: to tackle the challenges facing our seas and to celebrate the joy of what we want to protect. And so, as Dennis said, I'm sure, I'm the founder of GRIST, the environmental media organization. And 19 years ago, when I started GRIST, fewer people were talking about climate change. Fewer people were talking about things like plastic pollutions in the sea. Now, in a great way, there's so many more people aware about this stuff. Even in America, most people believe that climate change is happening and are concerned about plastic pollution. So this is tremendous progress. But the challenge now is too few people know about the opportunities. What are the solutions? What are the ways out of the planetary pickle? And so that's where this discussion comes in. That's why I'm so excited to be featuring these three luminaries. So why don't we come up here now, Senator Whitehouse, Wendy Schmidt, and Louis Perkins.
Why don't we put you front? Okay.
And I'm sure Dennis gave kind of the proper bios of these folks. But let me just say, I had a couple years ago, I asked Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator Whitehouse, if he were a marine animal, what would he choose to be? And in a very matter-of-fact way, he simply said porpoise. So I got that off the bat. And I want you guys to know that Wendy is a preeminent puzzler, both literally and figuratively. She solves problems. And I learned this morning that Louis, if he were here in another life, he would be a schmaltzy lounge player. So that's just some facts that you guys might not otherwise know. Senator Whitehouse, I wanted just to start with you. And before we kind of get down into wonkdom, could you explain a little bit your connection to the sea, your connection to oceans, and how you got turned on to these issues?
Mostly I think for a lot of us, childhood impressions stay with us through our lives. And I was a Foreign Service kid, and we were usually posted in coastal locations in Africa and Asia. And of course, I was home in Rhode Island, the ocean state, a lot. So you develop an affinity for the ocean. And during the course of my life, I have been to places where we used to either snorkel or scuba dive, and it was beautiful. Not anymore. In some cases, the reef is gone, crumbled to dust and dead. In some cases, it's mostly dead. So when you go to places that in your own lifetime were beautiful, what Pope Francis called the wonder world of the oceans, and then you come back and they're dead, and it all happened in your lifetime, it's hard not to get motivated by that.
Got it. How about you, Wendy? What's your connection to the sea? How do you get attached to stuff? And if you were a marine animal, what would you be?
Oh, I think I'd be a cephalopod. But I started sailing in 2007 and started diving in 2009. So I came face to face with the ocean. And I discovered a world under the sea that is enormous. And studying it since then, starting the Schmidt Oceans Institute, familiarizing myself with the research, you understand that most of the life on the planet is under the water. 90% of the living space on the planet is under the water. So we have to care about this. This is the only place in the universe with life at that scale on a planet. And so I look at it systemically now, and I think we're part of a much bigger system than we even understand, and we're just beginning to understand it. We have the tools today to do that. So we have a responsibility to use that knowledge and to figure out where humans fit in the living systems, in that web. And you can see examples of where we're failing at this, where our system is broken. It's not been broken for very long. I think since maybe the 1950s, you could measure, right, the growth of plastics and things that are in the environment. Plastic itself is not the problem. The problem is the system itself. Plastic in the ocean is a symptom of a much bigger problem that we are trying to solve, and we're all part of the solution.
Lewis, how about yourself? What awoke you to these issues in marine debris and oceans?
For me, it's the same thing, having a personal relationship with the ocean and water. I grew up in Florida, and I went to this little beach almost every weekend and all summer that my family had been going to for years and years, and I would see these photographs of my great-grandparents on the same little patch of land doing the same activities that I was doing. We would go out and row for scallops that we would pick up on the sand spit, and we would go down for oysters down the way, and a lot of that's disappeared. A lot of that doesn't exist right now, and I also remember as a child running up and down the beach and getting little black oil tar patches on my feet and asking what this was, and that was kind of the issue then, was you know, this oil that was coming up from the Gulf, and that was in the 70s. Now, when there's storms, I have to go through the yard in front of our cottage and pick the plastic out of the sand and the sea oats and all, and so for me, just seeing what's happened over this course of my life, you know, 40-something years, has just made this very personal.
Wendy, when we think about solutions that are coming out today, a lot of them got their start, I think, from philanthropy, seeding some projects. So could you tell us how you think about philanthropy? How can it address the problems of plastics pollutions and marine debris?
Well, I said we're all part of the solution. I think philanthropy has kind of a unique role to play. In my experience at the Schmidt Family Foundation with the 11th Hour Project, 11th Hour Racing, we look at how to create incentives. I think the whole world is working on incentives. Maybe they're not the right ones. We can step in and offer incentives for innovation. We can offer prize money. We've done this with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation recently. This is relevant to our meeting today, around developing new materials to replace the wasteful plastic packaging that we all live with, but don't necessarily want to last for thousands of years. We have technologies today. There are 10 teams that won prize money. They're in an accelerator this full year in the UK, working with industry, working with experts on the commercialization of some of these products. They might be based on nanotechnology, right? That they have different, there's a technical progress here that we all can appreciate and start to benefit from. When you look at what we take out of the oceans, we talked about fishing nets. There are companies now that are getting funding from our marine technology group to reinvent the fishing net. What if you could use technology to have no bycatch, to catch only what you're looking for? We developed, helped to fund a robot for going after lionfish in Bermuda when we were working with the America's Cup teams a year ago. So I'm very optimistic about what philanthropy can do in incentives and in funding interesting new frontiers, because our job is to take risks. That's what philanthropy does. We're the energy, right? We put the spotlight on something. Somebody called it the fizz in the drink. You know,
That's great.
It's what a government might not do, might not lead. We need governments, we need policies. Lisa spoke to that. We need data and we need opportunity. And then in my lifetime, everything's changed because of a microchip. We know things can change.
And the
fast.
pace of change can be rapid. Senator Whitehouse, you're on Capitol Hill doing the vital work of shaping policy to put the right incentives in place and guardrails. When you talk to fellow legislators, I'm wondering if they aren't swayed by the moral grounds alone of working on these issues, what is the business and economic case for reducing ocean pollution?
It's not very clear yet in Washington. I don't think we tend not to be the leading edge of change. My job is to try to get Congress not too damn far behind the leading edge of change. So, you know, much appreciation to Wendy and the incredible work that she does that really is at the leading edge of change. I try to bring us along as much as I can. What's been effective has been less making an economic argument than actually putting some structure together to process ideas through the Senate. I started the Oceans Caucus when I got there. We now have nearly 40 members. It's very evenly bipartisan, and we started plowing through bipartisan issues like pirate fishing and got 4 treaties passed and the Port States Measures Law, and all of that done by unanimous consent, by working with colleagues, giving them a little time to work through things, and then seeing success. And that's how the Marine Plastic Debris Bill got passed by unanimous consent in the Senate.
I wanted to ask
through that process, and so I really didn't need to make the economic argument, grabbing people one by one. We had a process in place that was able to lead this through, so that when it came to the floor and Republicans saw that they had like 16 Republican co-sponsors on it, including Jim Inhofe, for Lord's sake, we were suddenly in a pretty good place.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, this is some sort of bipartisan wizardry that you were able to pull this off. I think, what do you think of the prospects of the bill in the House? And could you talk a little bit more?
It's being heard right now in committee. There's every likelihood that it will pass. The question is, will it be slightly different than the Senate bill? And we'll have to try to accommodate the two in order to get something made into law. I can live with that. That's a high-quality problem to have bills that have passed the House and have passed the Senate, and now we need to accommodate them. We can get that done.
Great.
So I think it's a 90% chance that we get this passed in this Congress.
And just in an elevator pitch style, like tell us a little bit more what's in the bill.
You saw the gentleman from NOAA here, and the Marine Debris Program reauthorizes that program, creates a new marine plastic debris emergency designation and program, creates a sense to the Senate that we need to focus on new technologies that will actually develop plastics that biodegrade in the ocean, and I think perhaps most importantly makes it a priority for the trade policy of the country to pursue the half a dozen Asian countries whose lousy upland waste disposal infrastructure is the fundamental cause of particularly the marine debris problem in the Pacific. If this issue becomes a part of our trade discussions with those countries, that creates a huge, powerful imperative that can make a very big difference.
Great. So Louis, I just wanted to turn to you for a moment. So philanthropy can get the ball rolling, policy plays an important role, but in many instances the rubber hits the road or the plastics do or don't hit the ocean because of business decisions.
Right.
So could you tell me, what is the role of business in spurring action, especially with early stage ideas and projects?
Absolutely, thank you. So I feel like I have one of the coolest jobs in the world because I work for this institute that is focused on innovation, and our role is, I think, to create the blueprint that we hand over to policy, that we hand over to sort of the future way in which everything is done. And the role of government is going to be increasingly important globally, and we're seeing it at the municipal and country levels, and then as we sort of aggregate it across larger levels. And so our role is we work with companies directly, and we have this beautiful blueprint called Cradle to Cradle, which is a design methodology that is about safe, healthy materials going into the right cycle, going into the right place, as we talk about no unintended consequences related to how they're designed. And so if materials are identified as having high value and they can intelligently go into future cycles in the appropriate place and made with renewable energy and clean water and social fairness, this is the template and the blueprint of our time. So we're working with both large companies, you know, the big H&Ms and L'Oreals and large manufacturers on small scale sort of initiatives. I would like for it to be the whole product portfolio, but we've got to start somewhere. And then we also get to work with some startups, you know, companies that have really unique innovations. This afternoon in our workshop, we'll talk about some of those new disruptive materials that are coming on the scene. I'd like to see more of the larger supply chain, you know, chemical companies and material suppliers actually take the kind of innovation we're seeing with these startups that are getting awards and prizes that we're identifying. And I'm hoping that what we're doing is disrupting that with the way we're elevating these products. So once they get assessed through our work, you know, we're pushing out stories about them. We're telling what is the impact of this? What business sense does it make?
And you're actually certifying some of these efforts.
That is what we do. Yeah. So our methodology has been translated into this beautiful, very comprehensive program. And so companies go through. It's not unlike if you're familiar with the LEED program for buildings. It's kind of like LEED for products, and it's a very robust methodology. And we're constantly improving it to meet up with what the current innovations are that are out there. And that's what we do. And so we're a third-party assessor against our methodology.
Got it. Wendy, so you practice a lot of untraditional philanthropy, or non-conventional philanthropy, I'd say. I think not all philanthropists say take as many risks as you take. Do you have a sense of how we can better coordinate philanthropy and NGOs to work with industry? Because often NGOs are kind of reluctant, I would say, to work with industry.
Well, the risk profile varies from institution to institution.
Yeah.
When you have a philanthropy where the people who started it are alive and have a purpose, you tend to take a higher risk than if you are maintaining the corpus of a foundation that's generations old.
Yeah.
There's just a different profile. We do investments out of our philanthropy in programs, in companies. It's sort of early stage venture money, essentially, to get ideas to the place where others can jump in and invest. Maybe you read something about Sail Drone this week. This is a company out in Alameda, California. A fellow sailor, a mechanical engineer, back in 2012 approached us with this idea of a fixed wing drone, basically, a sailboat that would be autonomous, that could act as a platform all over the oceans, carrying instrumentation, gathering data in places where large, expensive research vessels can't even get to. And so he prototyped this original sail drone. It's bright orange. We gave him money for the R&D for all of this. Eventually, he attracted the venture community. And he, I think, took $60 million in venture money last year. NOAA is a customer. These drones are being used all over the place. Right now, they're out in the Pacific Ocean at the White Shark Cafe, helping research scientists from Stanford and on the research vessel Falkor to understand why all these sharks congregate in the middle of the Pacific Ocean every year. What are they doing? What are they eating? What are we learning about life in the different layers of the ocean? And it's just enriching our notion of what we need to protect and what is really there. I mean, what's the point of it if it's not for us? It'll all survive very well without humans. But our question is, how do we not conserve it? I think we're way past conservation. How do we restore it to what it was when your grandparents were alive?
Senator Whitehouse, I'm curious, as you kind of look out at international efforts around oceans protection and plastics issues, are there other countries that you think are somewhat ahead of the U.S.? What would it look like to have a really strong regulatory system in place to protect our oceans?
Well, we're seeing a lot of leadership out of Canada.
Yeah.
In the G7, it has become a significant topic for the G20. When President Macron was here from France, it was an issue that he mentioned and raised. So it's got a lot of international currency. I think that it's going to take international pressure to bring attention to bear on that key. It's not the only thing, but it's the key thing, which is to get these half-dozen Asian countries to have proper upland waste management infrastructure so it's not all flowing into the sea, and supply chain work and making sure that there's accountability into those countries and into the companies that work there is important. But the international pressure of the formal international sovereign agreements is pretty critical as well.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot of progress. You saw Jason from NOAA here earlier. Jason and NOAA are still doing a terrific job, notwithstanding who's president. So
Yes.
don't tell them. So we've got, there's progress still continuing.
We saw the slide that Lisa showed earlier and you've been talking about the waste primarily not coming from the U.S. What responsibility does the U.S. have to help solve this problem?
Well, we like to see ourselves as a leader.
Yeah.
The modern world that we live in was largely defined by what General MacArthur did rebuilding Japan and Asia after World War II, and the Marshall Plan in Europe. Our role has been foundational in the kind of liberal capital century that we've lived in, and it would be, I think, a real shame if we stepped back and did not work through the environmental issues that are now so bedeviling to our planet. And it's going to be particularly evil if we step back from that and don't lead and don't do our jobs and don't manifest ourselves as a city on a hill, because in Congress we couldn't say no to polluters.
Yeah.
That's the worst possible reason for us to defect.
Yeah.
Because that has a knock-on effect. We're a public democracy. It's not like the world isn't going to notice that we did nothing on climate change because we wouldn't say no to the fossil fuel industry. It's not like the world is not going to notice that we aren't leading on plastics because we can't say no to the American Chemistry Council. People will see that, and we're going to be held accountable for our behavior. So let's make it good behavior.
Yeah. Louis, could you make it a little bit more concrete, some of these initiatives you're working on with companies that maybe are on the edge, and maybe we could create in the future government incentives to have it happen more quickly? Just could you make it concrete, a partnership that you're pursuing right now or a product that's come out that's different?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. One of the ways in which we work, in addition to assessing and certifying the products, are to actually convene industry in these group collaboratives. And so we started about 5 years ago doing a collaboration in the fashion industry, where we were looking at what are the largest barriers to creating a circular economy that exist within fashion. And what it really came down to was the chemistry involved. The materials, yes, and being able to ensure that material flows of synthetics are coming, from different industries is important. But what it came down to also was how do we encourage a safer, higher level of chemistry going into the materials, because they're either going to end up as a biological nutrient in our soil, cotton, wool, et cetera, at some point, or they're going to end up as a product that we need to get back, and we need to be able to upcycle it or recycle it. And so the way that we started working was to aggregate a group of brands to say, who are you purchasing these materials from? What is the largest volume suppliers that you have in your portfolio? And then in a pre-competitive way, how do we together go to these suppliers and change the materials that are being put into the products? And so I'm happy to say that's happening, and then we've been adding to this materials library with new dyes, new processing chemicals, new scouring agents. I mean, when you look at the impact of wool, a lot of it is the bleaches and scouring agents that are getting into our water systems in New Zealand or places where we're putting this in. So it affects water health, it affects material health going to people as well. So that's kind of one good example on how. And then
So it sounds like the apparel industry, clothing industry.
Yeah, and then we're doing the same thing in the built environment too. We have a lot of building materials that have been assessed and certified through Cradle to Cradle, but it's not enough. And so being able to bring some of the largest purchasers of products that go into buildings. And so we're aggregating a lot of we're based in San Francisco and in Amsterdam, so we have this proximity to all these forward-thinking Silicon Valley companies who want to have better, healthier, safer, real estate space. And so we've aggregated this owner-developer user group that is saying, we want all our products and materials going into our buildings to be circular, safe, and healthy. This is what it looks like. This is the criteria. And so I think for me, that kind of level of aggregating is what's going to make this happen. There are a lot of really interesting stories of new materials that are emerging, and our workshop today is going to dive into some of those too.
Great. Wendy.
You should mention the
Yes.
Fashion Summit in Copenhagen. I was there with you last year.
That's
you went
right.
again this year. This is 1,800 young designers
Yep.
who get together. And what do they want?
They want sustainability, and they want circular economy. They want a world. I saw it on a slide earlier. The SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, aligned to industry. and they're saying, we will not go work for brands and design for brands who do not achieve these goals.
Yeah,
So
this wouldn't have been happening a decade ago. Just to unpack this, for those who don't know, the circular economy is this concept that the waste of one product almost becomes the feed source for a new product, and that there's zero waste in a production stream. Wendy.
There's a whole discussion about what does sustainability look like. You have to get down to the actual metrics. And there's somebody here in the room today who supplied some of the clothing that the sailors are wearing. And in our partnership with Volvo, 11th Hour Racing, we went to him and we said, we'd love you to supply the clothing. We want you to cut down on the packaging around your clothes. How do you do that? Well, he went back. We're talking about demanding. D was talking about that earlier. Make the request. He went back. It turns out they were able to save 70% of the plastic that they were using before in their packaging. They added 30% recycled content, and they discovered if they put an extra fold in the garment, the whole package got measurably smaller. So they're saving money, right? They're still delivering their product to people who now learn about what they've done because it's printed on the bag. And the whole thing has changed the business model.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where you can get in and make a change.
And to add to what Wendy's saying is, as interesting as these innovative new materials are, it's really the mainstream products and companies where we can have the biggest impact. You know, this is the way we've done it before, and this is the way we need to do it moving forward. And I think this is a prime example of just a very simple request that makes a big shift.
Wendy, could you talk a little bit about your work with new plastics and partnership with Ellen MacArthur and Lewis and that vein?
I'm on the board at Cradle to Cradle Institute. We started that in 2010, I guess. And the idea is to create this wonderful library, ultimately, of safe chemicals, safe materials that companies can just go pick from. In the New Plastics Economy Initiative that Ellen MacArthur's foundation is running, the idea is to get the industrial corporations in the room. She's now got commitments from, I think, 45 large companies, including Coca-Cola and Pepsi, to have their packaging materials fully compostable or recyclable by 2025. These people are also in the room for the prizes that I mentioned earlier. So there's an uptake for the innovation. If you commit to saying, I'm going to try to use what you have created through your accelerator, you've already developed a marketplace. And we don't really have time. You saw the growth of conventional plastic production. It's going to overwhelm the oceans if we don't do something about it. So we've got to both try to clean it up, which is very difficult, but more importantly, turn off the tap and create substitutes. Plastic is wonderful, it's useful, but it should stay in the economy and out of the oceans.
Yep, wonderful. I think we have some time for some audience questions, but I'm just doing a little lightning round while you guys, and if you could raise your hand, we could get a mic to you, but while that happens, lightning round. Wendy, becalmed or capsized? Lightning round, don't think.
Becalmed.
Becalmed. Lewis, Gilligan or Popeye?
Gilligan.
There you go. Senator, I'm giving you a softball here. What's your favorite body of water?
Narragansett Bay.
You had to answer that.
Good answer.
So do we have any questions in the audience? Back there. Yes. Sir.
Hi, I'm Kurt
Hey,
Spalding.
Kurt.
Hello, Senator. How are you?
Good. Kurt
had
was
the
our EPA
opportunity-
administrator in the previous administration.
Yes,
Great
I had the
EPA
opportunity to
administrator.
serve at EPA. And I just want to add to the context a little bit that the Senator was speaking about, that indeed there were people working on this in the many offices of EPA. We were able to push the TSCA 16 through, which puts the incentives towards green chemistry and safer chemicals in place. I just want us all to know that we need to continue to work for change so that agency can come back into this conversation, because as I understand it, a lot of the things like the Safer Choice program and other things we were trying to do a lot of the things that were discussed here have been waylaid. And I want to congratulate everybody, because it's music to my ears. In Region 1, we've organized a whole green chemistry initiative across the region, and there's some real talent here in this region on that kind of science. And now I'm at Brown and trying to do the same thing. It's not as easy as I thought it would be. Nothing's easy in academia, but it's fun. But I want to congratulate everybody. What?
Try politics.
Yeah, I thought I knew a bit about politics and silos, but I'm learning more now. But thank you all. And again, I think the idea of safer chemical or safer products at the molecular level is very exciting, because we know enough. We also know enough with informatics and other methods that can actually model what things are safe and what are not to get out in front of this. We don't have to have chemicals move around our society for 20 years and all of a sudden we find our blood levels are high, our whales are toxic, basically. We don't need to do that anymore. We have the science to do that, and I think you've all said that, so thank you very much.
Great.
Can I add something to what you're saying? It's a systems design problem. If you go
Yes, it
back
is.
to at the beginning of it, the plastics that are in our oceans now were never designed not to be there, right? Let's go back to the beginning and say, what's the intention here? If you were going to design a system of packaging food today, you might start with something else. So, yeah, we are where we are, which is a good thing.
Agree completely.
Yeah. Other questions?
Don't worry, Sheldon, this is not for you.
Sandra Whitehouse,
Ocean
yes.
Conservancy. Actually, this question for Lewis, and thank you for the work that's very important that you're doing. You just touched upon this, but I'd like you to expand a little bit on companies making commitments not only to make their products recyclable, but to use recycled material in the manufacture of their products. Could you expand upon that?
Sure. Yeah. So it's an interesting question because I think for a long time we were looking at through our methodology of a concern around toxic materials coming back into products, and so one of the reasons why our standard was created with material health, so closely connected to water stewardship and so closely connected with material reutilization, is we don't want to create a whole circular economy of pushing toxic materials into future products. That being said, we're in the process of revising our standard to be more up to date in terms of incentivizing creating a circular economy and looking at how we can marry our material health methodology and testing around the kinds of materials that we want to move forward. So the concept with a circular economy is it's not necessarily just to close the loop of a material going 100% back into a material, and oftentimes, as you probably know, you can't achieve the performance with 100% recycled content. You may need to mix in 20, 30, 40%. So the idea of actually cascading certain levels of use of materials into virgin is sort of the solution that most likely a lot of different product types will have to look at. But secondarily, we're also advocating for open loops, and I think there's so many tremendous examples of where industries say, you know, what we don't need or want next, we have a relationship or an extended producer responsibility around those materials. Who can we partner with to ensure they go to the right direction? When I was in the carpet industry, we were taking back a lot of nylon-facing carpet and sharing. First of all, we were warehousing a lot of it because we couldn't use it all in recycled content. But then we were also shearing off that nylon and densifying it and selling it to the automobile industry to use as high heat-resistant engine caps for cars, sending it up to Detroit. And it was a great sort of early step on, you know, how is one material have higher value and be upcycled into something that's of higher value than it was in the first life. So I think a large part of what we're trying to advocate for in a circular economy is creating an economic value around how something has equal to or higher value as it goes into a new material. And then, as Wendy said, we design that way in the beginning, and then we know we want those materials back. You know, we know they're high value and useful. If they're not high value and not useful, why are we making things with them?
Let's take one or two more questions back there, sir.
Hi, my name is Greg Hooser. I'm one of 8 student ambassadors from both NC State and Penn State. Volvo brought us on, so we're super thankful for that. So thank you, Volvo. But we're really excited for this panel specifically because we're not only students, but we're engineering students. So we're really interested in applying technology and solving problems. And so obviously this is a really big, worthwhile problem. So I guess one of my questions would be to this panel from the entrepreneurial perspective, from the policymaking perspective, where are some areas of focus that we as budding engineers could really dive into, whether that is from the packaging perspective of, you know, the upstream portion or downstream in collecting the plastic that is currently in the oceans? Where do you think would be most value added in us and future engineers really pouring their efforts into?
I can start on that. I'm sort of an upstream guy. So while I do think there's a tremendous need to solve some of these issues downstream, that's sort of, hopefully that will be a transitional kind of innovation and not something we're going to need in the next generation. So I think the more we can focus on looking at solving for what some of these materials were intended to do at the beginning and why they're good, whether it's for food safety or preservatives, or why some of these materials are good in the first place, and then how we might look at new forms of designing the product. It may not even be a material conversation; it might be a design engineering solution. We were part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's New Plastics Innovation Prize last year. I was one of the judges, and I got to see some really interesting innovations coming from these entrepreneurs around the world who are rethinking the way we interact with packaging and rethinking the way we interact with a lot of the ideas that we take for granted.
What's an example, Louis?
Yeah, I think it's simple things about just
coffee cups.
Yeah, coffee cups.
How do you imagine an origami paper coffee cup that has a lid built in, things like that. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly. Yeah, or ways in which some of the problems of the polypropylene cap being separated from the bottle, and how if you made it one homogeneous material, it could be recycled a lot easier than if you have these two, PET and polypropylene. And so it's just simple little things like that have a huge systemic impact on the recycling.
Yeah.
I would give you a recommendation to keep your eye out for incentive prizes that show up for engineers to redesign things. Ingenuity comes from everywhere. I've worked on 2 X Prizes, and I mean, one of our finalists in the oil spill cleanup X Prize was a tattoo artist from Las Vegas who sketched an idea on a cocktail napkin. You just never know where it will come from.
Not on his leg or arm.
You're better. You're better prepared. So go after it.
Yeah, I would say invent biodegradable replacements for plastic.
It's happening.
Something that will go in the ocean and revert to natural elements.
Yeah. Okay, last question from the audience. How about right there, sir?
Yes, hi, good morning. My name is Jonathan Stone. I'm Executive Director of Save the Bay. Sheldon, nice to see you again.
And you, Jonathan.
We have a local plastics problem here in Narragansett Bay. As many of you know who participate in our cleanups, we and our partners clean up about 10 tons of plastic on a single weekend in September every year in partnership with the Ocean Conservancy. And that is not part of the Pacific Gyre. That's plastic that we generate here in the beautiful ocean state. So my question for Wendy and for Sheldon is, what do you see as the role of philanthropy and the government sector in helping create demand among the citizenry for products, practices, innovations that can drive addressing the issue of prevention? We don't really want to be doing beach cleanups. That's not why we're doing it. And our focus in life has been to educate the public broadly to, as one of the sailors said earlier, demand, ask, request, make a point about changing behaviors. So what do you think the role of private philanthropy and the government sector is in helping drive that sort of grassroots interest in the topic? Thank you.
Sure. Good question. And I think as a philanthropist, our ability to get out there on the education message is always there. We can't blame people for using products that are sold to them, but they can make choices. If they're educated, they can make different choices. You can reward companies like L'Oreal that are going through their entire supply chain and making sustainable choices and using better materials and just improving every aspect of sustainability. If you find out about a company that's doing that, support them. Go out and do that. We look at opportunities for solutions. We try to fund the people doing the, sea bin kind of cleanup things in harbors, all that sort of thing, get ahead of that. And groups like yours obviously do a wonderful job in engaging the public. As a partner for this race, we look at this is an enormous opportunity to educate people around the world. And as this summit shows up in 7 different locations, we're building momentum as we go. We're getting commitments everywhere we stop. And every time we come back with a message, we've got more data, more information. This will become an integral part of this race going forward. So I'm very optimistic that the platform that you work on and others will become larger and larger, and it may be a generational shift as well when you see what people who are in school now are anticipating and where they see their opportunities. It's probably not in the computer systems that our generation became wealthy developing. It's going to be in these replacements for things that have been destroying our environment that nobody really thought about until it's kind of too late.
Jonathan, I'd say two things. First, things like the beach cleanup not only clean up the beaches, they engage the public mind, they engage the public will. And engaging the public mind and the public will is incredibly important. As you know, it's about more than picking up the straws and the caps off the beach. Once people get engaged on this issue, a whole lot of other pieces also begin to move. So that would be one observation. The second observation is that the philanthropic community and the advocacy community, when dealing with the corporate side, when dealing with industry, needs to start holding the corporate side and industry accountable for the full array of their performance. What I see is often very inspired corporate leadership that evaporates through the lobbyist, that evaporates through the trade association, until in Congress we are seeing the lowest common denominator of the industry. And the behavior of industries in Congress, in the positions that they advocate and fight for and electioneer for, is often at considerable odds with the stated positions of significant CEOs in the industry. And the sooner we close that gap, the more the policy section can engage. And it ought not to be asking too much to have a corporation or an industry align its lobbying with its own stated position. That really ought not to be too big of an ask.
That's good. So just to wrap things up, I'm wondering if each of you, starting with you, Liz, could you share something? You know, we have hundreds of thousands of people watching this. We have a couple hundred people in this room. What's something that attendees or viewers could be doing to contribute to solving these challenges?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I've been thinking about, this is like the third awesome event I've done in the last 10 days in different part of the country, and we're really good at getting together and talking. I think that's really, and I think, you know, sometimes we say talk is cheap. I think it's actually very expensive, considering the things that I get to. So putting it into action, I think is really what's really important, and we all hold a key to this future. We're all sitting in this room doing, and these guys watching, we all hold a key to it. Whatever we're doing, whether we're a voter, whether we're a consumer, whether we're a parent or working for an NGO, or regardless, we hold a key. And I think it's our voices and our demands that we make back on companies, on our politicians, you know, and suppliers. And this is where we can do it. And this is how you do it. You know, you just come together and you just speak your truth. So that's what I say.
Dude, you're not leaving anything for anyone else to say. But yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So Senator, I'm wondering, likewise, if you're a Rhode Island resident, how can someone get engaged in these issues and contribute?
Through Save the Bay, through Clean Ocean Access, there are lots of great organizations. Participate, don't agonize, organize, and participate in groups like Ocean Conservancy and others who are active in this. And you know, really don't give up hope. One of the reasons that we got the Oceans Plastic Bill passed is because one of its original co-sponsors was my frenemy nemesis, friend nemesis, what would you call it? Jim Inhofe, who is perhaps the worst person in the entire United States Senate on climate change and on
Senator Snowball.
All of that.
Yeah.
Senator Snowball, and I was Senator iPad combating him that very day. So we have a complicated relationship, but he liked this bill, and he became an initial co-sponsor of it. And it went back to him as a young guy going from Oklahoma down to the Gulf Coast and staying up late at night with a flashlight and a cooler and his folding chair to steer the trucks and jeeps that were driving up and down the bay away from the sea turtles that were coming out of their shells and going down into the Gulf Coast. So if somebody who is as much an adversary of mine as Jim Inhofe is, has an inner sea turtle, and he will support my marine plastic legislation because he has that affinity for the sea turtle, whoever your adversary is, find their sea turtle and find the way to work together.
That's good. So Wendy, we'll close with you. I mean, you're a trend spotter. You're one of the most forward-looking persons I know. What's a message of hope you can leave us with, and ways folks can get engaged?
I advise everybody who hasn't read Cradle to Cradle to read it. Once you read that book, you will never see the world the same way again, and you will start to think systemically about the way you live. Educate. Sign the Clean Seas Pledge. You can do that. Everybody watching can do that. There's a wonderful app called My Little Plastic Footprint that the Volvo Ocean Race has put out. It's fantastic. Share it with everybody you know. You'll learn a lot. I even learned a lot there. And then, you know, favor those companies that you hear about that are making the right steps. You know, we can vote with our pocketbooks as well as our hearts and minds.
Wonderful. Well, if you'd all join me in thanking these panelists. Thank you so much.
Lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chip. Great. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Chip.
Thank you.
And I give you Dennis Nixon.
There you go.
The
Thank
last
you.
man standing between us and lunch.
Thank you.
Okay.
I won't be long. That was a great panel. This has been a wonderful morning. At this stage of my life, I'm kind of looking for problems we can solve before I die. There's a lot of big ones out there. We're not going to fix ocean acidification or climate change in my remaining years. But this is one we can fix. Because I remember a plastic-free youth. I grew up a happy, healthy boy drinking milk from a glass bottle or a cardboard container. Somehow I managed to feed myself and clothe myself without plastic, and it was good. I can assure you millennials who wonder, how can we live without plastic? You can. Life can be really good in a post-plastic environment. So this is one issue that we can fix. The sailors did us a great service 3 years ago when they told us of what they saw, even in the most remote area of the world, that this problem beyond the eyes of me, a coastal sailor, was alarming to them. Boa Becking is a tough guy, and when you heard Bowie just absolutely disgusted with what he saw there, he said, this is my ocean, this is where I work, and it is becoming a garbage dump. We've got to take those words to heart and take action. You heard today from experts in industry, leaders in government, non-government sector, and the power of individuals to take that Clean Seas pledge. I hope you all do today. This is something we can win. And, you know, 3 years ago, when I was wrapping this up, I said, I hope we have a chance for the race to come back to Newport. Thank goodness it did. Because it gave us a chance to look back at the notes and evaluate what we had said 3 years ago. We did a lot of hypothesizing. We had some first-hand accounts and some guesswork, but not a lot of really good science done yet on the extent of plastic pollution around the world. A lot of work was done, and you heard today, just released publicly for the first time, data produced by instruments carried by Volvo Ocean Race boats that will change the story of how plastic is distributed in the world's oceans. So this race has already made a difference. Your actions have made a difference. And working collectively, we can fix this problem. There is cause for hope. There's a lot of big problems out there we might not fix real quickly, but this one we can fix. By the way, I do hope the Volvo race comes back here again. Volvo. We're very proud of our little city by the sea, and we're very proud of the fact that the first Ocean Summit occurred here, and the idea was considered so successful here that now, as the race stops around the world, most of the stops, at the urging of Volvo, contain an Ocean Summit to talk about environmental issues. So we have helped push sustainability into this race, and today it is a leader in the world of sport, emphasizing sustainability as a major mission. That's an exciting accomplishment that we in this room helped create. I'd like to first thank all the folks who've been watching online on the Volvo Ocean Race website. I want to tell you that in case any of these highlights you want to go back to, it'll be archived on the Volvo Ocean Race website. You can go back and watch this incredible event as many times as you want. And I'd now like to thank all of our sponsors that made this possible today, and in particular, welcome you to the luncheon event being held. And are there Volvo people guiding folks to the lunch venue? Yes. Look at that these nice people over here. Raise your hand again. They will be loud. The Ocean Summit sign up in the air will be leading you to the north casement. And I want to remind you that the lunch is being sponsored by Volvo Ocean Race and Stina Recycling. I'm sorry, folks watching us online, you do not get lunch. So thank you very much for all the speakers. I would like you to come forward for a group photograph. Let's see you over at lunch in about 15 minutes. Thank you.